Chapter 86. Wei Duoliya-sama. I have a companion, his name is Luo Yaokat. He is a black-haired, golden-eyed boy, the same age as me. He is very important to me. Please find him. We are now in the middle of a battlefield, looking for someone. Wait, you said Akat? Wei Duoliya suddenly caught the key word from Nuo Ayer's mouth. Her eyes widened and she couldn't help but look forward. Pont, who was gathering his power, also turned around. Teacher, is there such a person in your family? No, there isn't, but... The black-haired man stared at the golden-haired girl supported by Wei Duoliya. His mind was digesting the information she said. And he felt like he remembered something important. After Nuo Ayer heard Wei Duoliya's name, she immediately understood Pont's identity. You must be Marquis Pont. Please find a way to save Luoya. He is of the Akat family's bloodline. He should have been captured by the enemy army. Nuo Ayer's urgent cry for help shook Pont's mind, but it also gave Luoya an opportunity. The black-haired man's magic stopped in front of the rainbow-colored gem, and he hesitated for a moment. Although he didn't know this child, the Akat family's bloodline deeply stimulated Pont's nerves. There was no other way. There were not many people. Although the Akat family had been doing well for generations, there was an unsolvable mystery in terms of population. Every family head was basically a general without an army, and there were very few siblings. Because of this, the Akat family especially valued their family members, completely different from those nobles who only had 6, 7, 8 or 9 members and then competed with each other. Child, is your companion really one of my people? Yes. I swear on my bloodline. Please find a way to bring him back. Nuo Ayer said while bowing deeply. She couldn't care less about her pride in the current situation. She couldn't accept Luoya not knowing whether he was alive or dead. The two of them had been walking in this big maze for so long, it shouldn't end like this. Wei Duoliya, I'll leave this to you for now. I'm going to try my luck in front. But looking for someone in such a chaotic battlefield. There are too few people in our clan. Even if it's a side branch, I don't want to give up without doing anything. Don't worry. I will activate the maze before Vader completely bites us. After leaving this promise, the black-haired man set off again. At the center line of the battlefield, Luoya had already killed his way out. Scram. Inside the canal, Luoya kicked the third leg of a soldier from the Eric family with a golden hook, using the least effort in exchange for the greatest result. The soldier who was unlucky enough to be kicked by Luoya was thrown off his feet by the Wei Duoliya soldiers. After unleashing a fierce move, Luoya took a few deep breaths. Of course, he didn't take the risk to eliminate one more enemy. In fact, he had encountered a difficult problem. As the battlefield heated up, the canal became difficult to traverse. Originally, Luoya wanted to follow the canal directly into Wei Duoliya's territory, but reality taught him a lesson. Now that the rain of arrows had stopped and both sides were engaged in close combat, there were more and more people in the small canal. There were living, dead, half-dead, and all kinds of people. For example, the one who Luoya kicked in the crotch was a victor who crawled out after rolling into the canal with a Wei Duoliya soldier. But unfortunately, the victory was only temporary. In the end, he was defeated by the Celestial Empire's ultimate move, the national kick in the crotch. There was no future for a water thief. Luoya used practical actions to prove this famous saying from his previous life. But as the saying goes, there's always a way out. Luoya's kick really did create a future. What's going on? Why is there a child on the battlefield? He helped me kill the enemy. He seems to be on our side. The soldier who worked closely with Luoya to kill the enemy's captain spoke up. The black-haired boy, who wanted to change his route, quickly jumped out and said something shocking. Important military information. Please protect me when I meet Wei Duoliya. The black-haired boy said as he pulled out his winged dagger. The soldiers reflexively picked up their swords, but the holy shadow of the blade immediately attracted everyone's attention. This is a token given to me by His Highness. It's a holy dagger kept by the Heathcliff family. Please help me return to His Highness. The cautious Luoya was afraid that the spell would detect his lies, so he spoke the truth as soon as he opened his mouth. Chapter 87. 6. 5. 4. The system's countdown was drowned out by Luo Ye's angry roar. The black-haired youth had begun his final burst. Luo Ye didn't know who the Gulandayer was. Perhaps no one in this world did, but he had to admit that the skill he gave Luo Ye was indeed powerful. It even gave him the upper hand in terms of strength when facing Felder. The blonde knight was in a difficult situation. Luo Ye's other attributes weren't that great, but his strength alone was enough to overwhelm him. As the saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. In close combat, strength was often the most important factor that determined victory or defeat. Fortunately, Felder was a veteran of the battlefield. His skills and agility were far superior to Luo Ye's. Even if he was at a disadvantage in one of his main attributes, he wouldn't be defeated so quickly. He also knew that Luo Ye's burst would only last for a short time. Power and price. This was the eternal theme of this world. Felder could roughly see Luo Ye's true strength. He was probably only at source rank 6. Such a body could withstand the power of Luo Ye's temporary immortality. However, this immortality that was similar to super regeneration could not be maintained for long. Felder understood this, and Luo Ye, who was using the skill, understood it even more. He knew the emptiness that came after using the skill. When he couldn't defeat Felder in the first 10 seconds, Luo Ye knew that 30 seconds wouldn't solve the problem. However, he still gave it his all because he believed that someone could see it. And the reality proved his speculation right. 3, 2, 1. At the end of the countdown, a man's voice appeared out of thin air. It was as if a hero would appear at the last moment. Boy, well done. Spell, Gravity Core. When he heard the man named Ponte's words, Luo Ye knew that he had won the gamble. The skill Gulandayer's promise had finally reached the end. The golden-haired knight's expression changed. He could feel a strange spell reaction coming from his armor. He looked up and saw a rain of arrows and swords stained with blood shooting at him from all directions. Bastard! You're playing these tricks again. Ponte! Felder released his magic essence in anger, and his whole body was covered in bloody light. In front of him, a man who was originally fighting against him had appeared behind the young man who was smiling lightly. Ponte Akot and Felderic, the two nobles of the Saint Maester theocracy and the actual commanders of both armies, stared at each other on the battlefield, causing the surrounding air to smell like it was being burnt. Ponte, that kid is a heretic. So, do I have to share it with you, Marquis Felder? The black-haired man smiled mockingly. Looking at the angry knight, he didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and hooked Luo Ye, who was already exhausted. A large number of fluttering pages gushed out from his body. I'm always busy with saving people. Forgive me for not accompanying you. Goodbye, Lord Marquis. Before Felder could answer, Luo Ye's vision was filled with messy pages, and the sounds of the battlefield completely disappeared. The next moment, the pages disappeared, and the location outside had become the front line of Princess Wei Dualia's army. Teacher. Luo Ye. Two female voices rang in the ears of the men of Akot. Seeing that Ponte had successfully retreated, Wei Dualia breathed a sigh of relief. Nua Iyer directly rushed to the side of the boy and hugged him in her arms. Ouch. Nua Iyer, ouch. After activating the skill twice, Luo Ye, who was in severe pain all over his body, almost fainted on the spot when Nua Iyer hugged him. The girl hurriedly loosened her grip. So sorry, I didn't mean to. Nua Iyer looked worriedly at Luo Ye, who was covered in blood, and anxiously checked his injuries. Wei Dualia saw this scene and couldn't help but take a deep look at the black-haired boy. This child so cute. I always felt that he was a little similar to teacher, but Nua Iyer's reaction. Wei Dualia narrowed his eyes thoughtfully, and his expression became strange. Ponte began to get busy. Don't worry about the reserves. Cover the archers, everyone retreat. Ponte, who had returned to his camp, did not relax. The rainbow-colored gemstone appeared in his hand again. After the magical essence surged into the gemstone, the labyrinth's secret treasure shone brightly, and the fog in the air rapidly increased. The red thunder was still trying to offset the power of the labyrinth, but the difference was like the difference between a match and a water basin. Vader, who was also at Source Grade 3, could not suppress Ponte, who was supported by equipment and the field. Under the thick fog, Wei Duolia's army quickly retreated. Their behavior of abandoning their weapons and running back was clearly specially ordered. And this dumbfounding full-speed retreat was indeed effective. Almost all the soldiers who could move ran back. Manpower was the most precious resource for the already small Wei Duolia army. Chapter 88. Oh, we meet again. For those who have obtained my power in the past, you are the one who reunited with me the fastest. On the blood-red plains, the huge skeleton looked down at the small child and said with interest, "You're right. Those who have obtained my power, even if it's just a little bit, will cherish it very much. They won't dare to use it easily. I have never seen someone like you who used it twice in a day. Isn't power meant to be used? At the critical moment, you can use your trump card to get what you can't get. I think this is the best way to use power, and that's what I did." The black-haired boy looked up at the Goulandaire and said his thoughts faintly. The huge skeleton was silent for a moment, as if it was thinking about something. After a moment it nodded. Yes, power is indeed something that you don't need to be stingy with. Its existence needs to be shown. The Goulandaire seemed to be in a good mood after saying this sentence. Its huge body lay down on its side and closed the distance between it and Luoya. It was obviously interested in this little child. Since ancient times, powerful warriors have always displayed their bravery on the battlefield in order to gain awe. This awe will give birth to power and influence, which will also become a part of their strength. Your second battle was like this. Those people saw your bravery, which will greatly change your situation. But what about your first battle? What was it for? Was it for the little angel? Luoya listened to the Goulandaire's question and recalled the battle with Peter Carter. It was a battle that no one knew about in the fog. Even Father Crow didn't witness it. Killing Peter didn't bring any direct gain of fame and fortune. Instead, it was full of danger. The black-haired boy looked at the Goulandaire and sat on the ground. He recalled the image of the little angel in his heart and said these words. After the huge skeleton heard this, its eyes flickered. After a long time it said, "I understand. Yes. You want to mate with her?" Yes. The words of the Goulandaire made Luoya's eyes widen. The boy raised his head and stared at the huge skeleton in front of him. His small eyes were full of doubts. His handsome and cute little face flushed at a speed visible to the naked eye. How could you say that? When did I say that? I'm still a child. Could it not be? You don't want to mate with her? What do you mean by mating? That's not the problem. The young man's face turned red as he flew into a rage out of embarrassment. What I want to say is that I did the right thing. Why would you think of that? Luoya's explanation made the Goulandaire silent. The huge skeleton's eyes flickered as if it was recalling the past. The right thing to do. What was the right thing to do in this world? Sometimes, what people think is right often doesn't end well. Goulandaire said with a sigh. Luoya narrowed his eyes. He obviously heard something else. There are two kinds of correctness, relative correctness and absolute correctness. It all depends on which one you're talking about. What do you mean? Absolute correctness is the truth. For example, I'm a human male. This is an objective fact. Relative correctness is more complicated. Take Peter, who I killed as an example. In my eyes, Peter is an evil person who commits all kinds of crimes. He's a madman with a mental problem. In my opinion, killing him is the right thing to do. But in the eyes of some hostile forces, Peter might be a good person. Killing him is wrong. Different angles of looking at the problem will lead to different results. Which kind of correctness do you think it is? Luoya's question didn't get an answer. The Goulandaire seemed to have fallen into deep thought after listening to Luoya's words. His completely expressionless skeleton face was motionless. For a moment, only the sound of the nearby wind and sand could be heard between the two. My correctness is probably the second kind. The huge skeleton stopped thinking and stood up. A large amount of sand and stones began to fall from the gaps of his body. Luoya couldn't help but cover his mouth. Luoya Akit? Your idea is quite interesting, but you've already used up 2 of the 3 skills I gave you. The next time we meet, it will be the time for you to bring me the answer. Chapter 89. This woman is so similar to Nua Iyer. This was Luoya's first reaction when he saw Wei Dualia. It was basically the same as Nua Iyer's, but the boy quickly reacted. Although they were similar, they were only similar for now. Luoya remembered how Nua Iyer looked like in the game when she grew up. Although she didn't change much, her figure was still quite good. Compared to her, Wei Dualia was more regrettable. Calculating her age, she should be around 20 years old, but her body, even if Nua Iyer was enlarged a little, it was a little. Luoya was complaining in his heart when he suddenly saw the black-haired man behind the princess. The boy's eyes widened and he suddenly thought of a question. Wait, that's not right. According to the diary left behind by Pont's ancestor, wasn't he a lowly lover? If that's the case, why did he reject Wei Dualia in the end? At first, Luoya thought that Pont was a scumbag who flirted with little girls, but as the few of them began to talk, Luoya gradually realized that something was wrong. This Wei Dualia was not only a natural lowly, but she also seemed to have Pont completely under her control. Teacher, their relationship is really good. Yes. Now that you mention it, some families have recently started to oppose traditional arranged marriages, especially the young people. They are very quick to accept new things. Wei Dualia's words with deep meaning made Pont's face show a helpless expression. But Luoya could see that this helplessness was based on a certain degree of doting. It seemed that these two people really cared about each other in their hearts. Of course, Luoya didn't only see the surface, but also the essence. Although Wei Dualia hid it well, he was very familiar with the temperament that Wei Dualia occasionally revealed. He turned his head to look at Nua Iyer, who was also well-educated, and suddenly understood why she was a sadomasochist. Okay, it's passed down from generation to generation. Perhaps sensing Luoya's thoughts, Nua Iyer turned her head and glared at him. Luoya quickly averted his gaze and met Pont's eyes. The two men from the Akot family looked at each other, and suddenly felt very close to each other. That's right, it was a comrade in arms who was also poisoned by the women of Heidi Crit family. It was hot, passionate, and filled with the desire to vent. But unfortunately it was just a thought, whether it was Luoya or not. Usually, it was fine, but when it was time to speak, they were resolutely to support their angel. After all, if they were heard, it would no longer be a joke. Pont and Wei Dualia came to see Luoya this time and said a lot, but they didn't delve into the identity of the two. They seemed to think that the two appeared out of nowhere because Leon had been hiding it for a long time. And the problem only broke out during the chaos of war. Luoya was happy to see this. He raised his hand and put the blame on the sanctum, who was thousands of miles away. Nua Iyer expressed her helplessness, but she didn't say anything. Child, although you have been wronged for so long, you must believe that your father will not abandon any of the people of Heidi Crit. Vader may speak sweet words to you, but don't believe him. He walks the path of a tyrant. Wei Dualia stroked Nua Iyer's cheek and gently comforted his sister. Luoya looked at the two masochist queens' tender expressions and his eyebrows twitched. He looked up at Pont and saw the expression on the man's face. Mr. Pont, I have some questions about the family. I wonder if it's convenient for you? Luoya took the opportunity to look up at his ancestor. Pont looked at Luoya and nodded, obviously not putting on airs. Your name is Luoya, right? I'm the current head of the Akot family. You can ask me anything about the family. As the head of a small family, Pont hoped that there would be more people in his family. Besides, an outsider like Luoya wouldn't have the right to inherit the family, so there wouldn't be any conflict with the family. However, if something happened, they would contribute to the family. Pont knew this very well, so he was very open about it. What he didn't expect was that the young man from the Akot family didn't ask about returning to the family. Instead, he asked a very important question. Head of the Pont family, our family has its own bloodline, right? Can you tell me more about this? Luoya's golden eyes were full of determination as he looked at Pont. After a moment of surprise, the man seemed to have thought of something. His expression changed, and he hurriedly asked, Wait, was your performance on the battlefield because of your bloodline? You can say that. Luoya's hesitant words made Pont's eyes widen. The next moment, he grabbed Luoya's hand and walked out. Child, come with me. Huh? Pont, where are you going? The study. I have something to say to this child, so don't mind me. After dismissing the curious Wei Dualia sisters, Pont pulled Luoya through the heavy door and came to a study with fewer books. The two sat on opposite sides of the table. Pont wasn't in a hurry to speak. Instead, he poured 2 cups of tea and pondered for a long time. Chapter 90. Luoya's current feelings were very complicated, or rather, he was very embarrassed. It was a little like a child who couldn't control the adults who littered everywhere, or a brother who found out that his sister was a loyal fan of a certain celebrity. Alright, the latter comparison was a little too scary. Luoya, who actually had a sister in this life, couldn't help but tremble. However, the former comparison was more appropriate, at least in terms of embarrassment. 19th of March, sunny today, Wei Dualia wore a nun's uniform during the treatment. It was so cute, although the size of the uniform hadn't changed at all in the past 3 years. Luoya looked numbly at the entry of this criminal idiot in the diary. He then looked at the black-haired man who seemed to be relieved after writing it down, as if he was looking at trash. He carefully considered whether or not he should leave some phlegm for this ancestor of his before leaving. This is my unique price, don't mind it. Seemingly noticing Luoya's gaze, Peng Te explained apologetically. It turned out that Peng Te's supernatural system was based on Buronia's wisdom as the source substance. It was a branch of the School of Incantations. However, even though Peng Te was unbelievably handsome on the battlefield and seemed to be invincible, in reality, there was a heavy price to pay. For example, Peng Te had to write such a perverted diary in front of others, and he couldn't destroy it. In the past, he always wrote it in front of Wei Dualia, so his student always had something against him. Fortunately, although Wei Dualia had a sharp tongue, his heart was still on Peng Te's side, so he never made it public. After hearing Peng Te's words, Luoya recalled the large pile of diary entries in his study and suddenly felt sad for his ancestor. He probably didn't expect that this thing could be passed down for generations, and that it was still in the Aukat family after more than 100 years. After ending the conversation, Luoya and Peng Te drank some tea and went back to look for Wei Dualia and the others. Unexpectedly, they accidentally heard some strange words from the two of them. Actually, the progress on my side isn't that fast. Counting on them is just a dream. If it were up to me, it would be using force. You guys are back. When Wei Dualia saw the returning men, he stopped his ancestral teachings and turned around with a smile. However, Peng Te and Luoya felt an inexplicable chill run down their spines. What are you guys talking about? It's nothing. It's just a matter of bloodline in the future. Wei Dualia's words made Nuair blush, while Luoya and Ponte were confused. Could it be that he was thinking too much? That's right. How could the royal family do such a thing? Luoya shook his head and laughed. Peng Te was also relieved. After that, it was lunchtime. Wei Dualia and Peng Te naturally wanted to let their descendants, who were stranded outside, have a good meal. The 4 of them ate together. Because it was wartime, it wasn't very luxurious, but at least there was enough for Luoya, who had lost a lot of blood over the past 2 days, to replenish himself. During the meal, everyone chatted. Luoya took the opportunity to ask Wei Dualia about the reason for opposing Vader. Unexpectedly, the answer he received wasn't hypocritical but practical. Vader's ambition is too great. It's something that the current theocracy and even human society can't handle. He wants to create a great empire like ancient Austin to jointly resist the various disasters that humans face. However, with the current conditions, the possibility of that happening is very small. Although the theocracy is powerful, Pender and ancient Austin aren't weak either. Although the scholars of Bologna are loyal to Saint Mestre, once the theocracy launches an invasion, their stance will not be certain. Vader wants to absorb the heretics and create a more equal society. I don't object to this, but using such a radical method is too risky. It's been many years since the last Holy War, and the risk of the mutants invading the West is increasing every year. Launching a war at this time will weaken the strength of the entire human world. I don't want to repeat the tragedy of my mother, but I believe that reform needs to be carried out gradually. First, we need to absorb those families that don't have a religion other than the three major origin substances. Then, we can gradually expand to the heretics. Although it may be difficult, at least the risk will be greatly reduced. Wei Duolia told Nua Iyer and Luoya about his views. The black-haired youth found it hard to comment. Wei Duolia and Vader, this pair of siblings, could be said to be conservative and reformist. It would be strange if they could understand each other. However, the westward invasion of the mutants that Wei Duolia was worried about had indeed happened. It was just that it would happen about 100 years later. This point was both right and wrong. Looking at Wei Duolia and Ponte sitting opposite him, Luoya began to ponder a question. What exactly was this world? Did he and Nua Iyer really travel back in time? After pondering for a long time, Luoya came to a conclusion. Probably not. At the end of the day, there were many paradoxes in traveling back in time to change history. If Luoya were to use the many theories from his previous life, he would be more convinced of the concept of a world line. If someone really traveled back in time to change history, and then traveled back in time, Luoya felt that rather than saying that history had changed, it would be more accurate to say that he had arrived in a world line that he had created. So, was what Luoya was experiencing now an illusion? This was perhaps the easiest explanation, but after some thought, Luoya felt that it wasn't the case. So far, many things had refuted Luoya's idea. Moreover, whether it was Wei Duolia, Ponte, or the others, everything was too real. This place gave Luoya the feeling that it was a historical fragment that was independent of this world. It was similar to a mirror world. The bloodline of the Akkad family seemed to be a ticket and qualification that allowed him to become a witness. What he witnessed might be the elegy of an era, the spirit of an individual, or something buried in history. Luoya didn't know what it was exactly, but he knew that he had to witness it and make a choice. Chapter 91. The next morning, the battle broke out on time. When the fog dissipated along with the morning light, the streets outside the labyrinth hall went from silent to deafening battle cries within a short minute. The intensity of the battle was beyond imagination. Or rather, it was a battle to the death the moment the two sides came into contact. Vader's strategy was very clear, and that was to defeat the Queen's army at all costs and capture Wei Duolia. Most of Vader's personal guards were heathens. Strictly speaking, they were the second generation of heathens who had drifted here from all over the world. They were born and raised here, but because of their fathers and the origin substance, they had been treated unfairly for a long time. In their eyes, this was unfair. Why should the heathens with noble morals be discriminated against, while the Shia followers who looked like gold on the outside, but were actually rotten on the inside could do whatever they wanted? This was a problem that couldn't be explained by human morals, and also a huge contradiction in the theocracy of this era. The reforms initiated by Prince Vader were the light of salvation for these people. They longed to use their own hands to fight for a future for the next generation, a future that was relatively equal, and where the difference in beliefs wouldn't cause people to suffer injustice. It had to be said that Luoya, who didn't have any religious leanings, felt that this was a very orthodox way of thinking. The power that erupted from this way of thinking was indeed shocking. And when it was reflected in reality, Vader's army wasn't afraid of death. In order to bite down on the Queen's army as soon as possible, Vader's personal guards gave up on long-range attacks such as bows and arrows. They raised their shields and charged forward, withstanding the attacks of curses and arrows. Soldiers fell one after another, but those behind them immediately filled in. They gritted their teeth and showed no signs of fear. The strength of humans was to overcome their natural instincts. Living creatures' natural instincts were to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages, but armed with ideas, humans were willing to sacrifice for the sake of certain spirits and beliefs that existed in their hearts. Luoya felt that this was the greatness of humans, and also the most direct manifestation of civilization. However, Vader wasn't the only one with beliefs and spirits. The Wei Duolia army was also righteous. Thus, under the military flag that had fluttered for hundreds of years, the soldiers who held on to their duty fearlessly charged back. Even if their armor was stained with blood, the knights would still fight to the death without retreating. That was their honor and could not be trampled on by anyone. The fierce battlefield was like a meat grinder. Every second, someone would fall into a pool of blood. After the first round of battle ended, the leaders of both sides, as the strongest, had no choice but to personally enter the battlefield. Separated by the battlefield, the teacher-student group and the master-subordinate group faced each other from afar. Wei Duolia and Vader both had complicated expressions on their faces, but their expressions were unwavering. After his hiding place was discovered, Peng Te had stopped using the maze. Under the noon sun, the two armies faced each other, and the siblings began their final attempt. Sister Wang, have you forgotten what happened to Mother? In order to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, in order to make our country stronger, we need to unite all the forces that can be united. Obstructing reform and being stubborn, how are you any different from those nobles who forced Mother to her death? In front of the two armies, Vader raised his doubts with grief and indignation, drawing everyone's attention back to the princess's death, which was so heavy that no one wanted to talk about it. His words and questioning caused some commotion in the princess's army. Some of the soldiers were obviously shaken by his words, which were in line with moral standards. Wei Duolia's face showed a trace of grief for the first time after hearing her brother's shouts. Seeing this, Peng Te hurriedly held her hand. The princess looked at the man beside her and smiled. She stabilized her emotions and stepped forward to answer. Vader, I have never forgotten what happened to Mother, and I will not question your revenge. However, reform isn't something that can be done overnight. Look at the results of your so-called reform. In less than a month, rivers of blood have flowed in the holy capital. How many people have died because of you? Have you not considered them at all? Reform is inevitably accompanied by sacrifice. This is unavoidable. Since ancient times, reforms have always violated the interests of the nobles. As the saying goes, without destruction, there can be no construction. If the current system is not destroyed, how can we rebuild it? What you said is only an ideal. Reforms that don't shed blood will only be dragged out by the nobles and bishops step by step. Perhaps there is such a possibility. However, isn't it our duty to prevent this from happening? If blood must be shed, I am willing to shed my own blood, and not at the expense of so many innocent civilians. Vader, the blood of the people is what supports your ambitions. Do you still remember the teachings of your family? It seems that we can't reach an agreement. Exactly. The siblings were evenly matched in this final debate. Both of them stabilized the morale of the army, and also proved that they could not understand each other. Under their resolute gazes, the soldiers made their final preparations. Vader unsheathed his sword. Beside him, the golden-haired knight Felder followed closely behind. He looked back at the pairs of burning eyes of his personal guards and shouted, "For justice!" Oh! A roar resounded throughout the sky in response to Vader's declaration of war. At this moment, his raised sword was the best banner. On the other side, Wei Duolia and Peng Te also stepped forward. Both of them drew their swords and stood side by side. For peace. Oh, it was the same earth-shattering roar. It was as if the princess's army was venting their anger against the war. They were evenly matched with Vader's army, and neither side gave in. Then the bugle horn sounded. The two armies rushed toward each other like a torrent. The two of you, have you made your decision? Yes, Sir Knight. Please return to your team. I understand. May Shia bless you. Chapter 92. One of the reasons why the Saint's dagger was considered a sacred weapon was that it could understand people's hearts. The skills it gave birth to were often in line with the thoughts of its owner, similar to fulfilling people's wishes. Luoya was an extraordinary who wasn't strong enough. The Saint's dagger answered his wish and gave him, uncontrollable, a skill that could save his life. For Pont, the Saint's dagger complemented his attack power. Although the school of incantation spells could be cast very quickly, and had many extraordinary transfer and interference skills, like many other schools in Brogna, it also had its own flaws, and that was its lack of lethality. It was difficult to determine the outcome of a battle with a single strike. Pont, who had a deep understanding of this, craved for offensive power deep in his heart, and the saint's dagger did answer him by giving birth to Angel's Song. It could be said to be a super powerful attack that could decide the outcome of a battle with a single strike. It was a torrent of light that transformed all of the user's magic essence into an impact. In Luoya's eyes, it was a holy white super light cannon. The moment it appeared, everyone who witnessed it seemed to hear a sacred song in their ears, as if the angels were singing the songs of light. But for Vader, the target, it was the sound of death. Your Highness. Felderic was the first to react. He rushed forward fearlessly to meet the fatal attack. The loyalty in his heart made him look like a righteous man who was willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of his life. He rushed forward to meet the attack head-on. Seeing this scene, Luoya was dumbfounded. He never thought that Felderic, or rather Brian, who was always as calm as ice, would do such a thing. At this moment, he was like a legendary knight, willing to sacrifice himself for the lord he had sworn loyalty to. The blonde knight rushed forward, his body erupting with a huge wave of spell power. His blood began to collide with the light, but in the face of the combined power of Pont and Dualia, Felderic was powerless. Layers of bloody mist burst out from his body, and his roar was accompanied by a layer of suppressed pain. However, just as he was about to be unable to hold on any longer, a hand pushed him out of the attack range and replaced him to face the unstoppable light head-on. That was Vader. Vader had saved Felder, but the price he had to pay was that Angel's Song had successfully hit him. The knight, who was covered in blood, fell to the side and screamed in pain. It was the duty of a knight to block an attack for the monarch, but there were not many people in the world who would step forward bravely for the knight's sacrifice. However, Vader had to pay a heavy price for stepping forward this time. Even though the holy white light had been weakened by Felder, it wasn't something that Vader could withstand. The crimson electric light dissipated in the white light, and scorched flesh and blood splattered everywhere. After the violent explosion, the light gradually disappeared. The soldiers, who had regained their vision, stopped attacking and looked towards the rear. There they saw the prince, who was covered in blood in the thick smoke. Dead. We won. Your Highness. The Dualia soldiers looked at Vader from afar, and confirmed the situation with each other in disbelief. Vader, on the other hand, roared loudly, hoping that their monarch would respond. Tears streamed down Felder's face. He ignored his injuries and crawled up to confirm Vader's condition. The war seemed to have come to a standstill after this attack. Videshi Crit lost his senses. When he pushed away Felder, who had blocked the attack with his body, Vader didn't think too much about it. He pushed Felder away only because he knew that Felder would die if this continued. Death, the death of his friends, the death of his family. These were things that Vader had experienced, and they were things that he didn't want to experience again. Because of this, he picked up his sword and swore that he wouldn't repeat his mistakes. That was his original intention. However, what he didn't expect was that even though Felder had weakened the attack, Dualia and the others still seemed to have the power to kill him. Amidst the glaring light, Vader's body was riddled with holes. The song of the angel echoed in his ears, as if it was waving its hand to welcome him to the heavens. His perception of the outside world was completely blocked, and his consciousness gradually blurred. His body began to lighten, as if his soul was about to leave this complicated world. In that moment of confusion between life and death, Vader seemed to have returned to the bedroom in the palace of the holy capital when he was young. On that familiar bed, the brown-haired woman held him in her arms and softly told him her hopes for the child's future. Vader, you were born with a responsibility. You are the future king of Saint Mestre, Shia's apostle, and the son of the angel. You will uphold justice and uphold fairness. From the snowy northern sea to the dense forests in the south, everyone will sing of your achievements and name. The words of expectation filled with love echoed in his ears. Vader's soul, which was about to leave the mortal world, froze. At this moment, the young man recalled his mother, and a question suddenly appeared in his blank mind. Did I do it? Did I fulfill my mother's expectations? Vader pondered. His confused eyes gradually became clear, and his expressionless face gradually changed to be filled with anger. Figures flashed before his eyes one after another. The mockery of the nobles, the discrimination of the bishops, the smile of the person who hugged him on the day she left, and she said that she would wait for him to ascend the throne. That would be the time when they would be reunited. That was an unfulfilled promise, and also his last memory. It was as if it had been frozen forever in Vader's memory, as if it was silently telling him the answer to his question. No, I haven't done it yet. At this moment, Vader's eyes regained their clarity. The singing of the angels could no longer reach his ears, and the pain in his body returned. The magic elements in his body began to increase beyond common sense, and the source substance called fury reappeared and shone brightly amidst this question and answer. Can faith determine a person's status? Chapter 93. Luo Ye didn't stop Nuo Ayer from rushing out. One of the reasons was that Luo Ye felt that he couldn't stop him, and the other reason was that he also needed to do something. In the course of these few hours of battle, Luo Ye had gone through a lot of thought. The moment he appeared on the battlefield, it meant that he had already made his choice and had a way to carry out his will. Skill Gulandayer's promise activated. Countdown 30, 29, 28. The third activation of the skill didn't have an outburst of power and magic. Instead, it was more like a teleportation. Luo Ye no longer saw the chaotic battlefield. The smell of blood gradually dissipated from his nose, and the giant under the setting sun appeared once again. Are you finally going to give me an answer? On the Crimson Plains, the Gulandayer looked down at the black-haired youth with interest. Then answer me. How do the dead transmit their power? Luo Ye was silent for a moment after hearing the giant's question. He recalled all the details of his conversation with the Gulandayer so far, and slowly opened his mouth to speak. I have two answers. One is to this question, and the other is to your question. Which one do you want to hear first? 2. Haha, interesting. Tell me about them. The first one is the answer to this question. Regarding how the dead transmit their power. You should already know my answer since you've watched this battle with me, right? Luo Ye looked at the distant setting sun, and in his eyes were the figures of the brave warriors fighting in the holy capital. The faces of Vader and Wei Dualia floated before his eyes one by one, and then disappeared into the wind. Spirit, will, and thoughts. These are the methods by which the dead transmit their power. Some write history, some write books, and some spend their entire lives transmitting their ideas to others. When all of these are accumulated, they will change from quantitative to qualitative, and civilization and culture will be born and incubated. The youth recalled the brilliant civilization that was nurtured through 5,000 years of accumulation in his previous life, and the emotions in his heart deepened. In the end, the inheritance of this culture and civilization is the transmission of the power of the dead, or the sages of the past. It may change or remove the parts that are not suitable for it, and add new content, but this power will grow stronger with the passage of time. It will become a link that connects all the living. Luo Ye's answer made the Gulandayer ponder. The tall skeleton didn't comment, but he didn't expect Luo Ye's last sentence. Ah, but these are nothing to you. What? The Grandel's jaw opened, and the light in its eyes enlarged, making it look like a skeleton with a stunned expression, but Roha didn't care. I'm saying these things are based on the precondition that there are descendants and inheritances, but what about you? You don't have any of these things? The black-haired youth glanced at the huge skeletons that were half buried in the sand and sighed silently. Giants are now a legend buried in the depths of the Second Era. I don't know if your civilization still exists, but spirit, will, and even appearance have disappeared in the long history of mankind. The first situation doesn't apply to you, so I have an answer for you. Luo Ye pointed at himself unceremoniously under the surprised gaze of the Gulandayer. Me, I'm your answer, Gulandayer. The black-haired youth calmly looked up at the majestic giant, and said as if he was making a promise. I'm the carrier for you to transmit your power to the world again. Whether it's spirit, will, civilization, history, or even just pure power, you need me to show you. I may not be important, but I'm necessary for your purpose. This is my answer. Hey kid, you really dare to say that? Are you threatening me? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? If you feel threatened by my words, it means that I'm right and you don't actually hate me, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have helped me so much. Luoya said with a smile on his face. The Gulandair's skill was the key to him getting through the crisis time and time again. He even specially met with Luoya during the second crisis. Chapter 94. Within the Great Labyrinth, the terrain near the labyrinth hall had completely changed. The houses on both sides of the street had collapsed due to the shockwave. Soldiers from both sides were struggling in the dust, and the flat street had turned into a sandy flat. The power of Luoya and Vader's all-out attack was far beyond anyone's imagination. A huge cloud of dust rushed into the sky, like a flying dragon. It took a long time for the dust to settle. There was only one person left standing at the center of the explosion. It was the figure of a black-haired youth. Luoya endured the burden on his body and walked forward. He saw Vader lying on the ground. Vader had been defeated in this direct clash of power. He was too injured. Gulandair was worried about Luoya's situation, so the attack he released was actually just to cancel out Vader's attack. However, that was enough. Vader, who had lost most of his magic essence, would self-destruct. You're clearly using the power of a pagan religion. Why did you stop me? The golden-haired prince was lying on the ground covered in blood. He could no longer stand up. When he overdrew his life to advance to Source Rank 2, he was destined to not be able to fight hard. Luoya's appearance did not defeat him. Strictly speaking, he had defeated himself. Luoya, who knew this, did not assume the posture of a victor. He dragged his tired body and walked to Vader. There was no contempt in his eyes when he looked at Vader. Instead, there was respect. He thought for a long time and said slowly, "There are many reasons. There are many reasons. For example, I feel that in this era, starting a war and unifying the world is far less practical than expanding the range of human activities. But the biggest reason, if you were given a chance to protect the people close to you by picking up a sword, would you let it go?" As Luoya spoke, he raised his head and looked at a golden figure who was rushing over. It was Nuwa-Iyer, who had withstood the shockwave with a protective curse item. The golden-haired girl heard Luoya's words and stopped in her tracks. She met Vader's gaze. "Heh, so that's how it is. It seems that we are the same kind of people." Spirit, will, and righteousness were indeed the most important things to unite a person's heart. However, on a personal level, friendship, love, and family were often the things that could stimulate a person's potential the most. From another point of view, these were even the foundation of the former. Unfortunately, when someone close to me was in danger, I couldn't pick up that knife. By the time I could, she was already gone. As Luoya listened to Vader's lamentation, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. He looked at the prince who had devoted his life to erasing the tragedy of the past, the vanguard of the revolution, and the tyrant who had implicated many innocent people and caused their deaths. He felt that Vader was really complicated, and it was difficult to judge his merits and demerits. However, there was one thing that Luoya was certain of. "Although you didn't succeed, I still think you're a king." "Oh, are you clearly against me? I acknowledge your talent and spirit, but oppose your ideas and ambitions." "TSK, so that's how it is. You're really a rebellious minister. Little girl, you're probably going to have a hard time in the future." Vader smiled as he looked at Nuwa-Iyer, who had walked to Luoya's side to support him. The girl didn't know how to respond to his profound words. The prince looked at the two of them, and suddenly felt the burning anger in his heart that had been burning ever since Mary's death slowly dissipating. These two children, maybe they can do better than me? If this boy's strength is added together with Heathcliff's, as Vader thought about this, a relieved expression slowly appeared on his face. Then, under the gazes of the two people, he closed his eyes. Witness goal achieved. Remaining time in countdown, 4 hours and 22 minutes. Evaluation. Perfect 2 halves. Luoya, what's wrong? When he saw the word perfect in the system, Luoya finally lost all his strength. His body swayed and was about to fall, but Nuwa-Iyer, who had discovered him in time, pulled him back. "No, nothing. Okay, something's wrong. I can't stand anymore." Luoya, who had no strength left, hung onto Nuwa-Iyer's body. He laid on the girl's shoulder and almost couldn't feel his body anymore. The side effects of the Gulandayer's strength were too strong. Luoya's consciousness had begun to blur. He even suspected that he would close his eyes and kick his legs like Vader. Smelling the unique fragrance of an angel, Luoya forced himself to look at the system and saw a new message. Countdown to return, 4 minutes and 42 seconds. Seeing the new countdown, Luoya breathed a sigh of relief. After 3 days of hardships, Luoya and Nuo Air could finally leave this place safely. When he received the news, he felt tears welling up in his eyes. Before coming to this godforsaken place, Luoya could be said to have lived a sheltered life. At most he would punch children. In all fairness, this experience was really too difficult for him. However, in order to protect Nuo Air and awaken his bloodline, he forced himself to endure through one obstacle after another. More than 4 minutes was probably not enough time to say goodbye to Ponte and the others. However, there was a ban on talking here, so he probably couldn't say goodbye. Chapter 95. The setting sun left its last afterglow on the mountains. The campfire in the camp on the hillside was lit up, and people were talking and laughing loudly around the fire. In the mountains northwest of the holy city, Ai Liziakat was passing the time like a year. The atmosphere in the camp was very cheerful. Although this New Year's winter hunt was a last-minute idea, because of the addition of Kadia Akat, the strength of the participants had increased. When they had reached the village at the foot of the mountain last night, and heard that there was a giant poison-spitting bird dominating the mountain, driving other animals down the mountain to cause harm, the noble hunting party had been overjoyed. They had set off early this morning, with Prince Kane and the Marquis of Kadia in the lead. The party had slaughtered the bird before noon, and they had even brought back many bird eggs along the way. Working all the way until nightfall, the poisonous bird was burned to ashes. The rest of the feathers, head, meat, and eggs were all removed. Even the poison sac was prepared to be transported back to be used as a research material for spells. Such a big victory, such a successful removal of a pest for the people. Naturally, there was a celebration. The open environment in the wilderness made the atmosphere more lively, but there was a clear difference in the mood of the silver-haired girl. At this moment, Elisa was frowning. Her beautifully curved eyebrows were gently lowered. Her large eyes were filled with worry and sorrow that couldn't be erased. Her pitiful appearance was exceptionally lovable. Although the girl was in the mountains, her heart had always been in the holy city. Originally, she and Luoya should have attended the palace banquet together, and the winter hunt should have become a memory for the two of them. However, Luoya received an invitation from the Holy See. It was sad that she couldn't spend the new year with her brother. She didn't expect that Kai-in and the others would send Nuo Air, who was also alone, to the Labyrinth Pavilion. This was simply rubbing salt on Ai Lizi's wound. Ai Lizi didn't hate Nuo Air, and even looked forward to it. After all, the charm of the princess was real. It was a strange feeling that made people want to follow and obey. If it wasn't for Luoya, Ai Lizi might really follow the princess. Unfortunately, there was no if. When Ai Lizi met Luoya, it was like a withered flower meeting dew. Even if there were other water sources in the world that could make her grow more beautiful, she wouldn't choose any more, because it was enough. However, this gentle and kind brother of hers, who had limited talent, had actually become the target of the Princess Royal Highness. And now the two of them were under the same roof. Danger. Luoya, danger. Ai Lizi, who smelled the scent of a defeated dog, was very uneasy, but she couldn't do anything about it. The idea of rushing back was just a thought. The reality was that she could only sit on the log and taste the fresh bird meat, and then watch the uncles who were drinking heartily and singing loudly. Unknowingly, it was late at night. Although the adults' revelry was still going on, it was time for children like Ai Lizi to sleep. In fact, the maids did tidy up the tent and soundproof curse vessel for Ai Lizi. This time, Anna, who was temporarily promoted to the head maid, followed. As the president of the fan club, she naturally had to take care of the future lady in her eyes. Miss, it's time to rest. After a soft reminder, the maid led the silver-haired girl back to the tent, but she didn't expect to suddenly hear the voice of Marquis Kadia halfway. An emergency contact from the Labyrinth Pavilion? Bishop Philip felt that his life had encountered a small problem. In the study of the labyrinth pavilion, the bishop, who was wearing a white robe and chain-mail armor with a staff in his hand, was ready for battle. He stared at the boy and girl hugging on the ground in front of him, and fell into deep thought for a while. There was no doubt that the people on the ground were the targets he was ordered to save this time. The young master of the Ackett family, Luoya Ackett, and the beloved little princess of the Vatican, Nuwa Heathcliff. Seeing that the two of them were safe and sound, Philip should have been happy, but the problem was that the way these two children appeared was a bit strange. They appeared out of thin air. It was not an exaggeration at all. They really appeared out of thin air, after a flash of light. In fact, when Philip received the order from John of the Holy See, he was scared out of his wits. When he heard that the little princess of Heathcliff was among the people to be rescued, he didn't dare to delay. Nuwa was the treasure of the Vatican, and was supported by everyone. Therefore, as soon as he left the Holy Palace, Philip immediately set off. A team of hundreds of judges, each of them experienced in battle, rushed to the Ackett family's labyrinth pavilion on horseback in a quarter of an hour. When Philip said that Luoya and Nuwa were in danger, the palace guards and the private army of the Ackett family didn't believe him. What followed was chaos. The team of 100 people, including the Bishop of the Vatican, the senior judges, the commander of the guards, and the officers of the private army, rushed madly into the study like a 100-meter race. Their faces were as white as paper, and the maid Mia, who was outside the study, was so scared that she almost screamed. Then the door opened, and the men and women who were gasping for breath were dumbfounded. The study was empty, and there was no one in sight. Looking at the empty study, not only did they not feel relieved, but they also panicked. The commander of the private army of the Ackett family immediately contacted the Marquis, and the chief of the palace guards also began to report Cayenne. Philip leaned on his stick and stared, wondering if the Bishop of the Holy See had a bad memory due to old age and accidentally pointed at the wrong place. In the midst of the chaos, a flash of light suddenly appeared in the study. Everyone present was an expert, and when they saw this scene, they all thought that it was an enemy attack. In an instant, the sound of swords being drawn filled the room. In a second, more than 40 swords were drawn out of the room. Who is it? Where is the enemy? What's going on? Wait, there's someone in the light. It's His Highness. This was how Philip and the others discovered Luoya and Nuwa. However, the bishop didn't have the time to think about this. He didn't care how Luoya and Nuwa came or went, and he was focused on something else. The bishop, who had been single for more than 40 years, looked at the children hugging each other, and fixed his gaze on their lips. If he guessed correctly, the little princess of the Vatican, the hope of the younger generation of the theocracy, the chosen one, Nuwa, was actually kissing this stinking brat of the Ackett family before she fainted. Chapter 96. A week later, in an antique room, a handsome black-haired young man in noble attire was leaning on the sofa as he listened to his glorious deeds. Luoya Ackett, the heir of Marquis Ackett, an unlucky guy who encountered a king-level assassination team on the second day of the new year. Although he was safe with the protection of Great Holy See John, and even awakened his bloodline by chance, his life was not peaceful because of this. Instead, it was more accurate to say that he fell into a quagmire. The rumor just now. Is it widespread? The black-haired young man listened to his maid's cold narration, and asked with some hope. Anna was silent for a while, as if she was thinking about how to describe the scope of the rumor. I met a total of 7 people in the Chamber of Commerce when I was out shopping. 6 of them heard the rumor and asked me about it. Okay, you don't have to say any more. Luoya waved his hand and directly blocked Anna's remaining words. The young man held his forehead and thought about the whole rumor. The sweat on his forehead was about to drip down. This was the most popular legend in Saint Lorraine recently. It spread from the nobles to the peddlers. If a dog could talk, a dog could write it down from memory. It was a rumor that gathered all kinds of elements. It was said that in Saint Lorraine, there was a pair of childhood sweethearts who loved each other since young. Both of them were the only sons of noble families. Although they loved each other, They were unable to get married because of their respective marriage contracts. Just this year, the two couldn't help themselves and took the opportunity when the elders of their families were out to get together. In the end, they didn't expect that in the happiest moment, because of the weak defense of the new year, they were suddenly attacked by the cultists. In the fierce battle, although they defeated the cultists, the young man was seriously injured. In order to stabilize his injuries, the pure girl gave him her first kiss, which had the ability to heal. However, this action was discovered by the rescuers and reported to their superiors. Their relationship was discovered, and because of this, they were imprisoned in their respective homes and were about to receive severe punishment. At this point, the story ended, leaving a huge controversy and arguments. It caused a heated discussion among the people and the nobles. There were too many elements to this story, but there was only one core. Because of the marriage contract, the two lovers could not be together as they wished. This core could be said to have deeply pierced a group of people's nerves. The nobles had suffered from traditional marriage for a long time. And for the commoners, free love was one of the few things they felt superior to the nobles. Thus, a rumor began to spread like wildfire and gradually became a phenomenon. The bitter nobles who had similar experiences were almost in tears when they looked back on the past. The common folk were even more adamant in denouncing such an unreasonable thing, claiming that they should allow the protagonists of the story to have sex freely. That's right. In fact, everyone knew who the male and female lead in this story were. The reason was that the girl used her first kiss to save someone. It was the same as the legend of the angel's first kiss. Although the legend of the angel's first kiss was also a rumor. The gossip of the royal family had always spread the fastest, whether it was in Britain in the past or in the present. However, Mr. Luoya's situation was different. In the past he was a spectator, but now he was an actor. The black-haired boy lay on his back and looked at the ceiling, recalling the situation that day. In the center of the labyrinth, Wedualia instigated Nuair to cause trouble. After the countdown ended, Luoya and Miss Angel returned. At that time, the two people who were already in a bad state completely lost consciousness. What happened after that was what Luoya heard. It was said that on the night he and Nuair were attacked, they only disappeared for slightly more than an hour before returning. However, when they returned, both of them were covered in dirt. Luoya was seriously injured, and their posture was extremely ambiguous. Originally, this was not a big deal. The two people's posture was a little problematic, and they could just separate. However, the curse cycle that Wedualia mentioned happened. At that time, the bishop did not dare to act rashly. It was only when the professionals of the Vatican arrived that the two people were separated. That's right, Luoya was put on display for more than half an hour, while unconscious. It was practically a public execution. To make matters worse, this scene was broadcasted live to Marquis Kadia and Ai Lizzie, who were anxious after hearing that he was in danger. The result was, Ai Lizzie threw a tantrum, and it was so big that she was crying when she rushed back the next day. Brother Luoya, do you think that I'm not good enough? Do you not want Ai Lizzie anymore? What? No, who told you that? I really didn't. The silver-haired girl asked with tears in her eyes. She looked so aggrieved that Roja couldn't bear it anymore. However, she didn't throw herself into his arms like usual. Instead, she ran away. Ai Lizzie. When he saw the girl running out of the door crying, Luoya could be said to have suffered a huge blow. He was stunned on the spot. What's going on? Why is it different from before? Shouldn't the self-abased Ai Lizzie be the one crying and throwing herself at him? Shouldn't the girl be smiling again after giving him a loving hug? Under Anna's cold and disdainful gaze, Luoya fell into a state of doubting life. This situation between the siblings continued until now. Elisa, who knew what she was busy with recently, she didn't want to see him anymore, not even during mealtimes. He heard that she had obtained Kadia's permission to eat in her own room, which meant Luoya, the food feeder, lost his job. Is this the end of the world? It's the end of the world. The boy whose eyes had lost their glow muttered to himself. He could only pitifully eat the food he had cut for himself. Then day after day, he waited at the dining table, waiting for the girl to change her mind and be willing to talk to him again. Chapter 97. Waidualia and Ponte were also a combination of Heathcliff and Akkad. Their way of getting along could be said to be a model for Nuwa Iyer and Luoya. However, it was the opposite. Recalling Ponte's expression when she was completely dominated by Waidualia, Luoya felt that the future was very dangerous. However, at the same time, a question arose in his mind. Although Ponte didn't show it, there was no doubt that she had Waidualia in her heart. Her queen's attacks were also very fierce. There was no sign of fatigue at all. In fact, it was more accurate to say that the more she fought, the fiercer she became. Under such circumstances, the two of them actually broke up? Luoya scratched his head. Suddenly, he felt that the history he read wasn't only changed about Vader. Maybe Waidualia's part was also changed. In short, he didn't believe that the two of them who wanted to die together under Vader's butcher's knife would break up. Should I flip through Ponte's diary? With this idea in mind, Luoya thought for a moment and immediately shook his head like a rattledrum. Forget it. It's too embarrassing. Besides, compared to this, there are more important things. Luoya muttered to himself. His eyes narrowed, and his gaze gradually sharpened. In addition to the previous rewards, there was actually an additional reward, and that was information. Information about Ferd and Eric, or rather, Brian. But now that the two of them were back, everything that happened 100 years ago had been settled. This information about the current situation of the Eric family could be said to be invaluable. However, there was one thing that was more difficult to deal with, and that was, there was still no evidence. After nearly 200 years, Ferd's existence had long been buried in the dust of history. There was no physical evidence at all. Luoya's one-sided story was also meaningless. In fact, it might even alert the enemy. However, it was still necessary to warn Nuwa Iyer. Ferd wasn't a bastard. Not only did he change his face, but he was also in good health after almost 200 years. Wasn't this nonsense? Something was definitely wrong, and this kind of problem was most likely related to a cult. Considering Luoya's incident this time, the cult would not have an easy time in the near future. Not to mention the Vatican's Inquisition, Luoya's father, Marquis Akate, was not to be trifled with either. The military was prepared to set up a special force on the grounds that it was a threat to national security to join the ranks of the cultists. In addition to Eric's weakness during the banquet, Luoya estimated that Brian wouldn't be able to jump up for a while, so there was no need to be particularly anxious. After eating his fill and sleeping well, Luoya finally felt the beauty of life now. Of course, he wasn't just resting this week. He was also cultivating his body and mind, preparing for his breakthrough. Advancing to Source Rank 5 was a big threshold. Normally, one would need to go to the Vatican to apply for a ceremony to obtain the Mercy Origin substance. However, Luoya's situation was different. After awakening his family's bloodline, he had a bloodline-exclusive origin substance. Bloodline-exclusive origin substances were the most suitable origin substances that were owned by a small number of bloodline users. Compared to the origin substances of other religions, bloodline-exclusive origin substances had a chance of being recognized by the theocracy after passing a series of tests. After all, unlike the influence of the gods, bloodline-exclusive origin substances were like self-employed individuals. Whether it was good or bad depended on the user. Of course, these kinds of origin substances were extremely rare. Most bloodline users didn't have them, and they only existed in a few inherited families. Luoya had obtained them because of his successful bloodline awakening. Evaluation: Perfect 2 halves. Bloodline awakening. Successful bloodline you have obtained. King's Blood Bronze, the bell in the fog, the inspiration to guide the way. Your choice has jumped out of time and space, and as a successor, you have given fairness and justice to the deceased. Bloodline awakening rate. Perfect bloodline exclusive origin substance. Added origin substance. Crown automatically generated when the host advanced to Source Rank 5. Luoya looked at the string of information in the system and understood that his efforts had not been in vain. According to the system, only a person with a perfect awakening could obtain a bloodline-exclusive origin substance. As the saying went, a good horse was matched with a good saddle. No matter how high its output was, it would not be able to perform well without a compatible processor. From this point of view, the crown was the best choice. On the other hand, Luo Ye's physique did not seem to be fated with the three origin substances. This had always been a problem for him. Powerful strength was the foundation for Luo Ye to remove the annihilation flag. He could not give up on his extraordinary strength, just because the three origin substances were not compatible with him. Originally, he had wanted to rely on his relationship with Nuwa Iyer and the power of the Akit family to have a heart-to-heart talk with the Vatican and see if they could come up with a solution. Now that he had the crown, everything was resolved. To be honest, Luo Ye had breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the origin substance. However, what surprised him was that the bloodline king's blood not only increased Luo Ye's extraordinary strength, it also gave him strength. Vader's gift. The dying king has acknowledged your faith. He has abandoned his hatred and obtained peace. Received group skill. Crimson Thunder's Roar. Chapter 98. In fact, before considering the debt, Luo Ye had thought about whether he could copy the system. For example, he could become the owner of the Jiangnan leather factory and do business with no income, although he didn't have a sister-in-law. After all, if he didn't pay back a single cent, the system could continue for another 5 years. If Luo Ye could become a top expert in 5 years, the system didn't seem to need him anymore. But after some consideration, he still put away the idea of running away. After all, the weather was unpredictable, and having the system to protect him was equivalent to having an extra insurance. It wasn't like he couldn't pay back the 500,000 gold coins. He could earn more money in the future, but the system didn't have a second one. Thinking of this, Luo Ye set off to find Ka Dia, ready to talk about the management of the territory. His father was strictly speaking an office worker, belonging to the type of person who didn't inherit the family's hundreds of millions of assets to achieve the value of life. The proof was that his military was getting better and better, and the territory was getting less and less controlled. Luo Ye was heartbroken by Ka Dia's behavior of disregarding the development of the territory. As the saying goes, if the father can't do it, the son can do it. Today, Luo Ye wanted to have a good talk with him, and strive to get part of the territory's governance in his hands. But what Luo Ye didn't expect was that when he came in high spirits, he punched empty air. And, "Father isn't here?" "Yes, the master was summoned by the palace." "Is that so, the palace?" Luo Ye listened to the servant's words, and his mind couldn't help but think of the rumors with Nuwa Iyer. His heart was a little perturbed for a moment. "Ka Dia, it can't be because of this, right?" The black-haired youth here was nervous. And on the other side, Marquis Ka Dia met with an unexpected person in the palace. Holy See, Johann Heskeret. Johann Heskeret. Although Ka Dia was the king of St. Meister in name, he didn't have much contact with him. The Heathcliff family was in charge of too many things. They could be divided into two groups, one large and one small. The large group was naturally the Church of the Primordial Goddess. This was a large organization that concerned the entire human world. Not only did it have to be united in the face of a great disaster that threatened the entire human race, but it also had to be managed by the Church. The small group was in charge of the internal affairs of the Church of St. Meister, which was the responsibility of the king of a country. However, a person's energy was limited. Even John of the Holy See was the same. That was why John of the Holy See was usually in charge of the affairs of the Holy See, leaving the administrative matters to the ministers and his son, Kai In. He would only show his face occasionally during important anniversaries. Ka Dia didn't have a religious position, so he didn't meet Patriarch Heskeret alone many times over the years. The Marquis carefully recalled that the last time he talked to Heskeret was when he took over the position of the chief wizard of the Paladin Legion. However, unlike the solemn atmosphere last time, this time the two of them met in a very harmonious atmosphere, so harmonious that the Marquis himself felt that something was wrong. He looked at the white-haired old man's smiling face, and felt that there was a deeper meaning behind his gaze. Seeing this, the Marquis felt a chill in his heart, and felt that he should be more cautious. "Ka Dia, you should have heard about this incident, right? Especially about the two children." After some small talk, John of the Holy See finally got to the point. He started with the attack on Luo Ye and Nuwa Iyer. Marquis Kadia was shocked when he heard this and immediately began to blame himself. Lord Sanctum, I am very sorry about this incident. Because of the attack on Luoya, it involved the visiting princess and even threatened her safety. This is something I do not wish to see. The moment the Marquis opened his mouth, he gave a full speech. From his anger towards the evil cultists, to his apology towards the princess who was involved in this matter, and then to his gratitude towards the Holy See and the princess who acted in a righteous manner. His speech was flawless, and he had the demeanor of a noble. John of the Holy See listened to him and nodded repeatedly, expressing his understanding and support. He even comforted him with words of self-blame. Kadia, this is something that neither of us wants to see happen. But since it has happened, I think we should make corresponding preparations and countermeasures. What do you think? I think so. So, what do you mean? Marquis Kadia listened to John of the Holy See's question, and felt that he understood the purpose of this meeting. This time, the Holy See had made a big move for Luoya. They even sent out the Inquisition to hunt him down. In addition, Nuwa Iyer was in danger previously. It could be said that they had put in a lot of effort. With such a huge effort, there should naturally be a corresponding return. Now the Holy See should want the Akat family to perform. But what would this performance be? Send out troops to help eliminate the cultists? Or join forces to suppress the Eric family? It can't be a direct war, right? The nervous Marquis looked at the white-haired old man attentively, waiting for his answer. Hardadef smiled and calmly said the next sentence. I think Nuwa Iyer should be Luoya's protector. What do you think? I think it's possible. Wait, what did you say? Halfway through his reflexive answer, Kadia felt that something was wrong. He widened his eyes and looked up. It was rare to see him lose his composure. Chapter 99. Inside the palace, after sending Marquis Kadia away, St. John leaned back in his chair and heaved a sigh of relief. It had been many years since St. John had been so proactive in promoting his ideas to others. In the past, his visitors were usually very respectful, and he only needed to nod and shake his head at key points. This time, however, he was being coaxed and cheated like a pyramid scheme. Sigh, I can't help it. It's all for the sake of my child. St. John sighed as he recalled his precious granddaughter. It was true that parents loved their children dearly, but it was also true that they cared about their children even though they were from different generations. For the sake of his granddaughter, who had not been eating or drinking lately, St. John was willing to throw away his pride and come forward personally. That's right. Similar to Miss A.I. Lizzie of the Akat family, Her Highness Nuwa Iyer's appetite had not been good recently. After the evolution of an angel's bloodline, it would take some time for it to stabilize. This was a very normal phenomenon. It would take about 10 days, but for Nuwa Iyer, who discovered that Luoya was gone as soon as she opened her eyes, 10 days was too long. After being encouraged by Wei Dualia to kiss her, Nuwa Iyer fell into a coma, so she did not know the specific situation of Luoya. Although the news from the Akat family was that Luoya was fine, she still felt uneasy if she did not see it with her own eyes. When a child did not eat, the parents would always be the ones worried, not the child. This was a principle that would never change in any world. When Luoya's bloodline was awakened, St. John was cruel enough to let Nuwa Iyer undergo the trial with him. It was a challenge that he believed the Heathcliff family had to overcome. But in daily life, St. John was also a grandfather who doted on his child. Putting this part aside, Luoya's situation was indeed very concerning to him. Through Nuwa Iyer's description, St. John had a rough idea of what Luoya had done in the historical fragment. He was not surprised that Luoya was related to an ancient powerhouse, but he was quite concerned about the power displayed by the Gulandair. According to Nuwa Iyer, Vader had already advanced to the second level of the source tier. Although he had just advanced and was seriously injured, it was shocking enough that he was defeated by the Gulandair summoned by Luoya. After all, Luoya did not even have source form, so there was no way he could unleash the full strength of that giant skeleton. Historically speaking, the Akate family's patriarchs who had successfully awakened their bloodline were all outstanding talents of their generation. They also had a good relationship with Heathcliff. The protection of Luoya could also be seen as a kind of investment, and one that was obviously profitable and might even be acquired. So this time, St. John decided to make it a big deal. Although he could not randomly match Luoya, he could at least help his granddaughter. After all, angels only had one partner, especially females. Nua Iyer had always been uninterested in people of the same age. This time Luoya's appearance was a new force to be reckoned with, so St. John was relieved. To be honest, there were quite a lot of strange people in the history of the Heathcliff family. Although St. John had not yet discovered Nua Iyer's masochism, he already vaguely felt that something was wrong. But this was not important now. I've done what I can. The rest is up to my children and grandchildren to take care of themselves. The old man sighed and slowly walked into the depths of the palace. Luoya finally learned one thing today, that is, humans have their limits. AI Lizzie is eating in the room again today? Ha ha ha. The black-haired boy stared blankly at the lunch in front of him, holding a spoon and stirring the soup with no expression on his face as he muttered. A person may be able to survive a week without food, but a person without AI Lizzie might not be able to survive. Anyway, Luoya felt like he was going to die. Eating every day was his happiest time. Not only did it satisfy his appetite, but it also healed his heart. But now, it's tasteless, it's all tasteless. Luoya chewed on the food carefully prepared by the chefs, but it tasted like wax. In fact, he knew that this was caused by his current mood, but there was nothing he could do about it. He had no appetite at all. Is this the limit of not being related by blood? It's only been half a year, and he already hates me? I've already pulled out the flag, and I'm already so close to AI Lizzie. The two pleasures should have led to greater happiness, but why? The black-haired boy stirred the soup and shut himself in front of the dining table. The maid behind him couldn't stand it anymore. Although Anna was the president of Luoya x AI Lizzie's fan club, she was also Luoya's personal maid before this. She had to take care of Luoya's condition. Young master, please pull yourself together. Anna walked forward and bowed slightly. She looked at the hunchbacked boy and said, after a few days, Miss AI Lizzie's anger should have subsided. You don't have to be too pessimistic. Too pessimistic? Am I that pessimistic? What do you think? Anna's eyes twitched as she looked at Luoya, who looked like he had nothing to live for. The black-haired boy seemed to have noticed it. Is that so? Am I too pessimistic? But what I said is the truth. AI Lizzie doesn't need me to feed her anymore. She doesn't even need me anymore. She even hates me and doesn't even want to see me. Heh, is this the end of the world? No, I think you seem to have misunderstood something. Why would Miss AI Lizzie hate you? She doesn't hate me? If she doesn't hate me, why doesn't she want to see me? That doesn't make sense. Thinking about it, girls this age do change their likes and dislikes very quickly. So that's why. I was too careless. I thought that I had earned enough favorability, but it might have already expired. Haha, am I just the dust of history? Chapter 100. The heads of the Akot family had always liked to work in the military. Over the decades, there were countless officials who held important positions in the military. It could be said that they were half a military family. Because of this, the family had always had a good atmosphere and had a military style. For example, the servants, if they had good swordsmanship, they would be given extra points. Maids from military families were also given priority. As a marquis, the salary of the Akot family was quite good, and the labor intensity was not high. There were few people in the family, and there was no division between factions like in palace dramas. Therefore, it had always been a popular position in the Akot territory. Under this recruitment rule, it could be said that the servants of the Akot family had some skills. Therefore, when they focused on one thing, they were quite efficient and meticulous like the military. After receiving Luoya's approval, the maid did not rush into action. Instead, she gathered a few key members of the Luoya x AI Lizzie support group and began a detailed analysis. In the candlelight room, the heads of the couple were divided into two groups. The leader, Anna, was in the middle. She glanced at everyone and raised her eyebrows slightly. Where's Butler Falk? Master will be leaving tomorrow morning. Falk is making preparations, and will probably arrive in a while. I see. Forget it. Let's not wait anymore. Let's begin. Anna nodded after listening to the explanation, and decided to start the meeting first. The servants on both sides were energized. After a few opening remarks and explanations, they began to report one by one. Miss looked at the door 11 times today. Every time there was a knock on the door or footsteps in the corridor, her reaction was very big. She used a knife and fork when eating, but her mood was obviously low. Her appetite dropped from 1/3 of yesterday to 1/4 of today. No, Master is a foodie. 1/3 is already very bad, right? Miss AI Lizzie's sleep quality is also not good these few days. On average, she only gets 4 hours of sleep a day. Anna listened to the statements of the support group members and thought silently. The current situation was undoubtedly on AI Lizzie's side. The silver-haired girl was in a difficult situation, but Luoya did not fully understand the reason. Is the matter of Miss learning curses for Master still a secret? Yes, Lady AI Lizzie is determined not to let young Master know about this. She seems to think that it would hurt young Master's pride, and she is afraid that she would lose young Master's protection and love. I don't think these 2 points are necessarily related. Anna, who was familiar with Luoya, shook her head helplessly. She didn't think that Luoya would stop pampering her just because AI Lizzie had become stronger. In fact, he might even be happy. Humans might not be able to beat cats, but would that stop them from sniffing cats? Although it wasn't exactly the same, Anna felt that it was the same. But this way, let's not talk about taking the initiative. Objectively speaking, it would become a situation where Miss AI Lizzie studied hard for young Master, and young Master took advantage of this time to have an affair. Sob, Miss is so pitiful. Calm down, we're still in a meeting. After emphasizing discipline, Anna made a stage summary. After a few days of torment, the conflict between young Master and Miss should have basically been resolved. The two of them still have the intention to reconcile. But after being repeatedly rejected a few days ago, young Master has become a little autistic. He doesn't dare to look for Miss anymore. Miss is now riding a tiger and can't get off. After the conflict, she doesn't know how to end it. This is the problem that we should solve now. But how should we solve it? It's very simple. Facing the doubts of her subordinates, the fan club president Anna's eyes flashed. Let us break the door between young Master and young Mississippi. Miss, don't you want to eat more? This is today's fresh Harley fish. Sorry, I really can't eat anymore. In the large bedroom on the west side of the labyrinth, a silver-haired girl gently put down her fork. Looking at the fish steak in front of her, strictly speaking, it was delicious and delicious, she shook her head. Recently, my appetite hasn't been very good. Chapter 101. Luo Yaokat was staring at the ceiling in a daze under the quilt at this time. Everything started after lunch. In this dark age where AI Lizzie did not see him, although Luoya lived a miserable life, he could still distinguish the priorities. Although he suffered a big emotional blow, this could not make him give up improving his strength. Every day after lunch, Luoya would take a nap, and then he would start training in the afternoon. It was called training, but it was actually the practice of swinging the sword by himself, so that the body could form muscle memory to operate more efficiently. Swinging the sword was physical work, so it was bound to sweat. In the past, Luoya would take a bath and change clothes after the exercise. Today was no different, but the weather looked like it was snowing in Chengdu today. How could the snow stop Luoya's determination to become stronger? Recently, he had to adjust his mood and find time to promote to source level 5. Of course, he would not be lazy because of this weather change. Snow. It was not as good as drizzling. So today Luoya practiced in the snow. To be honest, not only did it not affect him, but he felt quite refreshed. He did not sweat much even when the weather was cold. This should be a pleasant practice, but he did not expect that when Luoya entered the room, Anna was anxious. Young Master, aren't your clothes all wet? Oh yes, but it's snowing. Of course it will be wet. No, you will get sick like this. Take it off. I will prepare a hot bath for you. Well, okay. Luoya, who also wanted to take a bath, did not care too much about Anna. He took off his clothes and took a hot bath according to the maid's suggestion. So far, everything was normal, but after the bath, things became strange. Master, please take your temperature. Temperature. Luoya looked at the small silver tube in Anna's palm, which was similar to the thermometer in his previous life, with a strange face. It was nothing. This little curse vessel to measure body temperature was one of the few popular curse vessels in Shiya's life. It was similar to a thermometer. It was held in the mouth, but why did she suddenly want to test this? You just wore wet clothes. It is easy to catch a cold. It is safer to take a test. Oh, I see. That's true. Adhering to the idea of being careful, Roha held the stick for 3 minutes until it was as hot as his mouth before he took it out and handed it to Anna. He didn't expect Anna's face to change when she saw it. Young master, you're sick. After the maid saw the curse vessel, she told the boy with a serious face. Luoya was dumbfounded. What? Are you sick? Yes, your body temperature has increased by 2 whole levels. You must rest in bed immediately. Anna waved her hand, and a group of maids immediately swarmed into the room. Some put on a towel, some put on a coat, and brought Luoya back to the bedroom. No, it's really hot. I don't feel anything. I should be fine. Young master, as the personal maid appointed by master, I have the responsibility and obligation to consider your health. Please cooperate with me. Under the attack of Anna, who was worried while wiping her eyes, Luoya had to agree to stay in bed for an afternoon to see the situation. The boy stared at the ceiling and waited for time to pass. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. That's not right. Anna didn't let me test my body temperature when I practiced swordsmanship on a snowy day last time. Why does she suddenly want to test it this time? And the snow was heavier last time. It buried my ankles. Luoya was puzzled about this problem. He could only blame it on his bad state recently, so the people around him were a little sensitive. Just as he was about to sleep hard, he suddenly heard footsteps coming from outside the corridor. The next moment, the door was pushed open with a bang. Brother Luoya. The person who rushed into the door was the silver-haired girl that Luoya was familiar with but hadn't seen for several days. At this time, Ai Lizzie was anxious. When she saw Luoya lying on the bed, her big eyes immediately turned red. Ooh, Brother Luoya, I was wrong. I won't do it again. Hey? Ai Lizzie. The boy looked at his sister who he hadn't seen for a few days and doubted his eyes. However, before Luoya could react, Ai Lizzie threw herself into his arms and hugged him, crying and apologizing. It wasn't until Ai Lizzie's maid followed her into the room that Luoya finally reacted with a shiver. F***ck. Anna, you're a fucking genius. The black-haired boy finally understood his maid's intention. With the help of his wingman, he naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. His body went limp on the spot, and those who didn't know would think that he was about to die. Chapter 102. I'm sorry, what did you say? In the room, Robert raised his head in surprise and looked at the young girl sitting on the chair. Xia Luo's cold expression didn't change as she spoke again. Your management rights in Ossel Avenue have been revoked. Please move out within 3 months, or we will enforce it. Wait, young miss, you've seen our financial report this year. What's going on? You want us to move out? The middle-aged man asked in confusion, but all he got in return was a cold gaze from the young girl. The data is indeed good, and the revenue is also real, but whether the money is still in your company is another matter, right? Xia Luo's words shook Robert, but with his many years of experience in the business world, the man's expression was still strong. He was about to open his mouth to explain, but he was stopped by the young girl. All right, you don't need to say any more. Don't you understand? You don't have the aura of wealth on you. Let me see why. Oh, is it because of gambling? The brown-haired young girl took the document from the maid and glanced at it. There wasn't a hint of surprise on her face, but opposite her, Robert's expression had completely changed. It was rumored that the Sorofia tribe could turn stone into gold. Anyone with a bit of knowledge would know that this was just a rumor, but this rumor wasn't groundless. It had a basis in reality, And that was the Sorofia tribe's legendary ability to sense the aura of wealth. Whether it was technological investments with countless variables, or business collaborations full of fraud and traps, the Sorofia tribe, who inherited the blood of the Highland Elves, only needed to find the side with the strongest aura of wealth to be invincible. And today, Robert was fortunate enough to be the test of this ability. After being easily seen through by Xiaoluot, he wanted to say something, but the young girl didn't give him a chance. The frosty young miss waved her hand, and the people on both sides immediately came forward to chase him out. Young miss, please give me another chance. I promise that this year I won't." Before Robert could finish his words, he was dragged out. The merchants waiting in the living room all watched the scene unfold before them. "That's the Luo Sha Merchant Guild. Last year's newcomer, he thought he could fool young Mississippi. What a fool." Yeah, in the eyes of Lady Xiaoluot, any little tricks are futile. That's a miracle that only appears once in 100 years. The experienced merchants converse with each other while the newly nominated merchants eavesdropped on their exclamations. The brown-haired young lady also let out a sigh behind the tightly shut door. "It's not a problem of next year. You don't have the smell of wealth on you anymore. Poverty is inevitable." The young lady seemed to be talking to herself as she answered Robert's question. The female servant behind her stepped forward and respectfully said, "Sir, I'm sorry. This is the fate of all gamblers who are addicted to gambling. Young miss, you don't have to take it to heart. How about taking a break for a while?" That's fine," Xiaoluo replied tiredly after a round of examination. The servants who received the order immediately got to work. The solemn office furniture was removed, the color of the roof began to fade and gradually turned into a transparent skylight. The relaxing potted plants were placed one by one according to the designer's instructions. There was a single table for afternoon tea, top-grade qigong tea brewed by a professional, and desserts made by a famous dessert chef. In just a few minutes, the room transformed from a solemn study into a sunny and lush courtyard. Xiaoluot's long brown hair glistened under the sunlight. The sunlight that filtered through the roof's special material greatly reduced the damage to her skin, so she didn't need to use an umbrella. Phew. By the way, Galacy, how's the development of the Land of Chaos? After drinking the tea, the young girl thought of something and looked at the black-haired maid beside her. Galacy stepped forward. "Young miss, the progress there is still very slow. The environment is too unstable, and we don't have enough manpower." "I see," Xiaoluo replied helplessly. She didn't blame her subordinates, but rather said that this result was within her expectations. Xiaoluo Sorofia, the current head of the Sorofia family, and the beloved daughter of the president of the Sorofia Merchant Association, Bruce. She was 10 years old this year, and in the eyes of the outside world, she was one of the noblest people in the world. She was known as the princess without a title. However, this was only on the surface. In fact, behind these seemingly beautiful titles, there was a more real and serious title, and that was the next generation of the family. Xiaoluot had an extremely rare atavistic bloodline. She inherited the legendary beauty and some of the abilities of the Highland Elves. In the hundreds of years of Sorofia's history, there were only a few family heads who could barely stand shoulder to shoulder with her. However, great power often came with great responsibility. Xiaoluot had been involved in the family business since she was 7 years old, relying on her ability to sense wealth. Up until half a year ago, her involvement in the family business was still considered ordinary. Her involvement in the family's decisions, be it in terms of importance or scope, was not great. However, ever since Bruce obtained a strange oil lamp, he began to put great pressure on her in the name of nurturing her. Each decision was more important than the last, and there was a dazzling array of development plans. This year, Bruce even threw 2 major family projects to Xiaoluot and let her choose one. The development of the Land of Chaos, Tansun, and the development of the coastal Twin Horns port. Chapter 103. Come ai lizi a, awu. At the dining table in the Labyrinth Pavilion, Luoya once again fed ai lizi with his spoon after a long time. The girl swallowed the soup obediently, and even licked her lips with her delicate pink tongue. Favorability plus 100. Ah, this must be heaven. The black-haired boy looked at AI Lizzie with a face full of healing, unable to hide the smile on his face. After an entire afternoon of talking in bed, Luoya and AI Lizzie had completely reconciled. After the argument, the two's feelings for each other had even improved. This was reflected in their actions, which made them even more clingy. They didn't want to separate at all. Luoya wanted to make up for all the AI Lizzie he hadn't been able to absorb this week. AI Lizzie also needed to release the feelings she had been suppressing for the past week. If it wasn't for the fact that Luoya felt that it was a bad influence, AI Lizzie would have slept in the same bed as him tonight. However, there was one thing that Luoya was slightly disappointed. AI Lizzie was now 8 years old. After overcoming her psychological barrier, she felt that she needed to be more independent, so she requested that Luoya only feed her once every 3 days. Luoya naturally supported AI Lizzie's growth, but in private, he was both gratified and a little lonely. Being able to feed her once every 3 days really made him feel a little uncomfortable, so he cherished today's interaction even more. As a result, there was a clear difference in temperature at the Akat family's dining table. Luoya and AI Lizzie were glued to each other like glue, while the Marquis was left alone to chew on his bread. What's going on? Weren't they still in a Cold War this morning? Isn't this too fast? There wasn't even a sign? Then how am I supposed to say this? Father Kadia was a little worried. From his standpoint, AI Lizzie was already half his student, so Kadia was actually quite supportive of AI Lizzie, but Nuair, was the princess that easy to kiss? And that rumor. Sai, why does it feel so complicated? My stomach is starting to hurt. Is there any soft food? Get the kitchen to make some soup. Thinking about his son's future, Kadia was a little dumbfounded. He ordered a thick soup. In his expectations, Luoya didn't have much power, and would just marry a bunch of daughters from small noble families and spend his days researching how to expand the population. But now, Luoya had awakened his family's bloodline. Kadia was naturally happy about this, but it seemed that there was a lot of trouble that came with it. Not to mention others, Nuair and AI Lizzie weren't easy to deal with. Not to mention the princess. AI Lizzie was now a little monster in Kadia's eyes. As for the reason, AI Lizzie was almost at source rank 5. That's right, in a month's time, AI Lizzie had skyrocketed from source rank 7. And the speed of her growth was like a rocket. Now she was already at the peak of source rank 6. In her words, every time she thought of Big Brother Luoya, power would constantly surge out. Kadia was speechless at this explanation. Power to them was like a river that needed to be gathered bit by bit, but to AI Lizzie, it was like a fountain that would erupt with a single shovel. 8 years old and at the peak of source rank 6. At this rate, Kadia estimated that AI Lizzie would be able to obtain origin substance soon. It must be known that even Nuair, the pride of the church nation, only reached source rank 5 at the age of 9. This was too fast, and the Marquis couldn't accept it. Kadia never thought that the girl he had adopted out of kindness would turn out to be an extraordinary genius that exceeded his common sense. In the future, she might even become a world-class expert. Most importantly, she was dead set on loving his son. It would be a lie to say that this wasn't a pleasant surprise, but after the pleasant surprise, Kadia began to worry. Neither AI Lizzie nor Nuair were easy to provoke. In the future, if they quarreled, Luoya wouldn't be able to suppress them. Thinking of those female extraordinaries in history who were abandoned because of their infatuation, or who killed their loved ones out of hatred, Count Kadia felt a chill run down his spine. Although his son didn't seem to be such a scumbag, when it came to matters of the heart, could it be reasonable? Kadia recalled his own limited experience in relationships, and felt that this matter was a bit difficult. Moreover, when he looked at Luoya's usual actions, he felt very confused. Luoya's actions seemed to be no actions. Could it be that his son had already reached the realm where no actions could be used? Kadia began to suspect as he drank his soup. He stared at the two of them and thought for a long time. In the end, he didn't mention that Nuair would become Luoya's protector. After dinner, Luoya stayed in the study for a long time before parting ways with AI Lizzie. Kadia returned to his room with a heavy heart. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, he was in a good mood. Luoya felt that his condition today was unprecedentedly good. He naturally wouldn't miss such a good opportunity. After instructing Anna not to disturb him, Luoya began to look at the system in his room. Detected that the host's condition is good. Recommended to purchase items to complete promotion. Boluo Advanced Powder 5th Edition. Chapter 104. What did I do last night? On the bed in Ai Lizi's room, Luoya looked at the ceiling that was completely different from his own room and doubted his life. The girl's jade body was still pressed against his body, and her warmth made him restless. Her soft breathing echoed in his ears. The scene that happened the day after the couple consummated their marriage really scared Luoya. Wait a minute, didn't I drink Burrow's divine water last night and then sleep? How did I end up in Ai Lizi's room? Something's not right. Was it a dream? Thinking of this, Luoya pinched himself. And it hurts. He leaned closer to the girl and took a deep breath. And it smells good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a dream. But why? The black-haired boy's eyes widened as he doubted his life. He was still very nervous about the fact that the two of them slept together, especially when he didn't know what they did last night. After that, Bo bowed and left the scene, revealing everything that he had seen without leaving out a single detail. Originally, before this matter was exposed as the exclusive maid, she had to help Luoya cover up, but now that everything was exposed, she had to protect her Mississippi. But to be honest, Anna wasn't lying. If Luoya was an adult, then his behavior last night would be the standard of drunken stupor, but because he was a child, it shouldn't have reached that level. But was it more important than whether he hit home run or not? The most important thing was that Luoya went to Ai Lizi's bed. Even the princess, who was unusually tolerant of her young master, wouldn't be able to accept this kind of thing. Thinking of this, the maid politely bowed and left. The door closed, and the room fell into a deathly silence. The black-haired boy fidgeted on the chair. Although he didn't know why, and probably didn't have a specific reason, he felt that he was in the wrong when he met Nua Iyer. As the saying goes, the most frightening thing is a sudden silence. After listening to Anna's long description, Luoya finally understood what was going on. Simply put, he had a memory lapse. Drinking to the point of blacking out was something he had only experienced once in his previous life. That was when he was encouraged by his friends to drink the deep sea bomb. The power of the mixture of many types of alcohol made him feel like he had lost his memory the next day. Luoya did not expect that even though he was prepared, he would still be tricked by Burrow Pharmaceuticals. Moreover, this time it was much worse than the first time. He was almost in tears. Who would be able to prevent him from going crazy after drinking? Feeling bitter in his heart, Luoya couldn't stand the silent atmosphere and looked at the blonde girl. At this time, the Nua Iyer was looking straight ahead and gasping for breath. She was probably trying to calm herself down. Obviously, she was angry at Luoya's dazzling performance. I didn't do anything. I really didn't do anything, Nua Iyer. You have to believe me, Luoya said weakly. Now that Miss Angel was in such a state, he didn't even dare to speak loudly for fear of accidentally provoking her. Nua Iyer heard Luoya's words and blinked. She was silent for a while. After a long time, she looked at Luoya. Tell me your explanation if you dare to lie to me. Impossible. I, Luoya, am telling the truth. Facing the girl who narrowed her eyes, Luoya opened his mouth and made a promise. Then he told the truth. Actually, I recently got a potion that can help me reach Origin Level 5. Yesterday, I was in good condition. I wanted to use the potion to break through, but I didn't expect the potion to have side effects. After I drank it, I didn't know anything. I only woke up this morning. It's fake wine, there's fake wine in it. Fake wine is harmful. Luoya slapped his thigh with a look of regret. Nua Iyer heard his words and saw his sincere expression. The anger in her heart finally subsided a little. The current human world wasn't the same as before. The average level of potions couldn't be compared to the BOLO series. Therefore, Nua Iyer's impression was that it was normal for potions to have side effects. She personally opposed the use of potions. However, not everyone in the world was like her, relying on their own talent to break through. Although Luoya had awakened his bloodline, he was currently only at bronze rank. The past few years without a bloodline had caused him to lack some progress in his extraordinary strength. Now that he was anxious to break through, it was normal for him to use potions. Nua Ayer was in no position to criticize him for this. However, carelessly using potions and causing an accident was another matter, especially when the accident was still green. Luoya, I understand that you want to become stronger, but using potions without investigating the side effects is very dangerous. You are too reckless. I have to ask Uncle Kadia about this matter. How can you be so reckless? Wait. I don't think this matter needs to be reported to father. I was just acting crazy because I was drunk. Let's not tell the parents. When Kadia asks me where the potion came from, what should I say? Luoya was helpless and wanted to persuade Nua Ayer to change her mind. Unexpectedly, there was a knock on the door. Big brother? Are you inside? Chapter 105. AI Lizzie is here. The moment they realized this fact, the two people in the room had different feelings. Luoya felt a little numb. AI Lizzie's intrusion while he was trying to prove his innocence to Nua Ayer was definitely not a good thing. In fact, Nua Ayer on the other side was also on high alert. Big brother? I'm here, AI Lizzie. The black-haired boy replied with difficulty. The door opened and a girl in a white dress walked into the room. She first smiled gently at Luoya, then turned to Nua Ayer and bowed politely. Good afternoon, Your Highness. It's been a long time since we last met after your birthday party. Good afternoon, AI Lizzie. Indeed, I went to look for you before, but I heard that you were still sleeping. I didn't expect you to come so quickly. Nua Ayer smiled in response to AI Lizzie's greeting. His words expressed his dissatisfaction at being disturbed from his conversation with Luoya. The silver-haired girl didn't react at all and replied calmly, I'm sorry. This matter is indeed my fault. Last night was my first time with Big Brother. I stayed up too late and was too tired. I couldn't get up this morning. AI Lizzie's explanation made Nua Ayer's eyebrows jump while Luoya was dumbfounded. It can't be, did they really do that kind of thing? Wait, don't panic, ask first. AI Lizzie, what do you mean by first time? Of course it's the first time I slept on the same bed as Big Brother. Oh, is that so? Luoya patted her chest and gasped for breath as she wiped her forehead. She was finally relieved. But while Luoya had avoided the crisis, Nua Ayer was not happy at all. After all, the person she liked had an adopted sister who was not related to her by blood. If she could still be happy, she would be crowned king. Nua Ayer's main point was not whether Luoya had made a mistake this time. Her main point was that he had the motive and opportunity to make a mistake at all times. As the saying goes, there is only the difference between the 0th time and the umpteenth time. This time, the two of them were able to sleep on the same bed. Next time, they would be able to roll around in the same bed. Miss AI Lizzie, as a lady, I don't think your actions are appropriate. The golden-haired angel maintained a friendly smile on her face. Her words carried a hint of criticism. The Akot family is a big family with a long history, so they shouldn't have the absurd custom of letting men and women of the same age share the same bed, right? This kind of thing only happens in commoner families with many brothers and sisters, right? I think there are quite a lot of rooms in the labyrinth. By the way, Luoya, which room were we hugging in before? It has changed so much in the past 200 years that I can't recognize it. Hugging together? Elder brother? No, that was... The hidden message in Nua Ayer's words caused AI Lizzie's expression to change slightly. Luoya hurriedly explained. After listening to Luoya's wonderful adventure, AI Lizzie heaved a sigh of relief. But Nua Ayer's questioning did not stop because of this. Luoya, tell me which room it was. Miss Angel continued to ask with a smile. Luoya had no choice but to seriously recall. But this recollection made his face pale. Wait, that room can't be. F***CK. Yes, it's the third room in the west. Is that so, the third room in the west? You said it so abstractly, I still need to think about it. Aya, isn't that Miss AI Lizzie's room? Nua Ayer suddenly realized. She looked at the silver-haired girl with an apologetic expression. So AI Lizzie lived in the room we used before. But the bed should have been changed, right? This is really... Hee, just pretend I didn't say anything. Miss Angel looked at the angry AI Lizzie with a pitiful expression. She pitied her and was too lazy to pursue the matter. This ultimate blow not only killed AI Lizzie, it also killed Luoya. What's going on? This feeling of tasting it right in front of him. The black-haired boy swallowed a mouthful of saliva and did not dare to make a sound. He tried his best to reduce his presence. On the other side, the silver-haired girl also calmed her breathing and smiled again. Is that so? Your Highness seems to have used that place before. It's your memory, right? Since that's the case, I'll give in. Elder brother and I will be in another room next time. Oh right, I'll go find elder brother. Chapter 106. As soon as Nua Iyer finished speaking, there was a strange silence in the room. AI Lizzie blinked when she heard Miss Angel's declaration. Luoya was also confused. He held Nua Iyer's hand and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Nua Iyer. What's a protector? The name wasn't too difficult to understand, but the Heathcliff family had too many titles, such as the Defender of the Light in the human world, the Mediator of the Nobles, and so on. In short, the protector didn't seem to stand out among them. Luoya's head was full of question marks. He felt that the title made him feel like a big brother who collected protection fees. Nua Iyer also came to a realization. By the way, Heathcliff hasn't taken on the duty of a protector for decades. It's normal that you don't know. Miss Angel smiled and looked at Luoya's golden eyes. Her face showed some tenderness. Do you remember what I said to you at that time? I said that I would protect you, love you, and be your protector. It's not just a promise. Most of the people Heathcliff promised to protect are victims of political assassinations, the children of soldiers who died on the battlefield, or the politicians of other countries who abandoned the dark and joined the light. But these are only the third level. Nua Iyer softly explained the protector system of the royal family to Luoya. In general, the protector system was divided into 3 levels. The third level was the lowest, followed by the second level, and the highest level was the first level. Of course, different levels meant different treatment. The third level was mostly verbal, like, this person is under my protection. The second level was to send actual forces to protect the person. As for the first level, in theory, Heathcliff would send out his private army, similar to the large group of palace guards around Nua Iyer. However, as the saying goes, you can be a thief for 1,000 days, but you can't guard against a thief for 1,000 days. The power of protection was only one aspect of the protector system, and the punishment was even more powerful. Most of the people in the third level were from the country. It was easy to deal with them behind closed doors. Once the protected person died of unnatural causes, the theocracy would deal with all the participants in the incident within 10 years to avenge the victim. Most of the people in the second level came from abroad, and the enemy was probably not in the theocracy. The punishment was to put all the countries and forces involved in the murder into the theocracy's blacklist. They would be suppressed and punished in all aspects for 100 years, even including starting a war. As for the first level, there was nothing much to be said about it. The indefinite order to annihilate cultists. This was the job of the judges of the Inquisition. All their major achievements were recorded on this piece of paper. Every day they would rack their brains on how to destroy the organizations, countries, or individuals on it. Even if I King want to kill you, no one can stop me. This was Heathcliff's attitude towards villains who had offended the first level, and they had done just that. The Secret Ritual Church, a large organization of extraordinaires that had already been destroyed, had once been the #1 target on this list. After years of large-scale pursuit without regard for the cost, even such a large organization could not withstand it. From this, one could see how terrifying the order of annihilation was. It was terrifying because there was no end to it. Our protection relationship is based on an ancient contract. Originally, it should have been the second level, but since I myself made a similar promise, I made an exception and upgraded it to the first level. The first level? That means That's right. From this point of view, you are now a member of the royal family. You are my closest family member, and I am your protector. Every action that harms you is the most direct provocation to me. Nuo Ayer's words stunned Luoya. He never thought that his relationship with the princess would develop to such an extent that Nuo Ayer was willing to protect him with the country's machinery. To be honest, this protector system gave Luoya a great sense of security. As the villain of the original work, Luoya's goal had always been to capture the flag and increase his chances of survival. But now, it seemed that Nuo Ayer had achieved more than half of his goal. With the support of Nuo Ayer and his precious AI Lizzie, even if the main character and the remaining 2 female leads wanted to kill him, Luoya would be invincible. Nuo Ayer, you thank you. After hesitating for a long time, Luoya could only express his gratitude. Nuo Ayer heard his words and smiled, then turned to look at AI Lizzie, whose face was pale. Miss AI Lizzie, you should understand now. As Luoya's protector, I have to be concerned about his situation, so the Alcott family's matters cannot be used as an excuse to stop me. So that's how it is. Is this how you do it? Your Highness. The silver-haired girl clenched her fist and tried to control her emotions. She never thought that other than herself, there would be someone else who could see through the uneasiness that Luoya had been hiding so well. The girl raised her red eyes with a hint of weakness, but more than that, there was determination. Your Highness, I don't have your power and status, so I can't do what you said. But don't think that you can monopolize brother. You may be able to protect brother, but that doesn't mean that I can't do anything. Your Highness is so busy with official business. Although you are a protector, how many days do you have to accompany brother? Chapter 107. In the familiar study room, Luoya looked at a bookshelf full of diaries and skillfully pulled one out. These were hundreds of years old antiques, and it was also the price of Ponte's ability. During the new year, Luoya thought about burning them, but now he just felt a little nostalgic. In the journey of the historical fragment, although it wasn't long, Ponte left a deep impression on Luoya. Now that Luoya returned to reality, he sighed and no longer had the interest to destroy the corpse. What exactly are you going to tell me about the ancestors? Luoya flipped through the pages of psychological crimes records while absent-mindedly asking Nuo Ayer. The blonde girl was sitting at the side, stroking the teacup that Wei Dualia used. After hearing Luoya's question, she turned her head with a troubled expression. As you know, I've broken through the bloodline and advanced to silver, so these days, I've been stabilizing my condition. But while adjusting my body's condition, I also looked through many records in my free time and found some hidden secrets. Oh, is that so? What is it? There are many such as, I'm actually a descendant of Vader. I see. What did you say? Luoya, who was still calmly flipping through the book, answered subconsciously. But after the words left his mouth, he suddenly reacted. He jumped up and looked at the girl on the chair in surprise. His eyes were full of disbelief. Nuo Ayer wasn't surprised by Luoya's reaction. She just smiled bitterly and nodded. You didn't hear wrong. I, or the current royal bloodline, strictly speaking, is inherited from Vader Hei's Crete. What happened? Wasn't he defeated in a battle with Ryan of the Holy See in history? He lost, but it doesn't mean he died. Nuo Ayer sighed and told Luoya the confidential information kept by the royal family. More than 100 years ago, at the end of the Gemini War and the March Rebellion, although Vader was powerful, he didn't go all out because he couldn't find Wei Dualia. In other words, he didn't reach Source Rank 2. So Saint Leon easily defeated him when he returned. After quickly quelling the rebellion in Saint Lorraine, Vader was naturally put on trial. But unlike the rumors of a secret execution, Vader was in fact only imprisoned. There were 3 main reasons for this verdict. The first was naturally the attitude of the Holy See Leon at that time. Leon was a relatively weak monarch in the history of the Hei's Crete family. He was good at fighting for the interests of the kingdom, but he was a typical peacemaker. He was very tolerant of the nobles in internal affairs, and didn't know how to deal with his own people. This could be seen from how he was forced to send Princess Mary out of the palace to wait for an opportunity. However, such a good-for-nothing had actually become strong after a few setbacks. After losing his wife, he stood his ground on the matter of Vader, and fell out with the nobles for the first time. In his opinion, it was because the nobles had forced Mary away that such a huge problem had occurred in his family. Therefore, he firmly refused to execute Vader. The second reason was because of Wei-Dualiya. At that time, Wei-Dualiya was the representative of the conservatives. Her sibling relationship made it impossible for her to kill her brother, who had already been defeated. Furthermore, Wei-Dualiya had Pont behind him. This meant that the interest groups after the victory of the war remained silent on this matter. The third reason was because of the 5 major nobles. As everyone knew, the 5 major nobles were the foundation of the theocracy. Now, except for the Akate family and the Luxon family, who had been neutral for 10,000 years, the other 3 families had more or less participated in the rebellion. This didn't even include their vassals. It should be known that the nobles who could send troops all had territories. If this matter was investigated further, half of the nobles in the theocracy would be implicated. Therefore, the nobles who had contributed to Vader's sentence and punishment didn't want it to be too severe, because that would mean that they, as accomplices, had also committed a serious crime. Therefore, when they found out about the attitude of the royal family towards Vader, they immediately jumped out to whitewash him. With these 3 reasons, Vader's final outcome was life imprisonment. The news released to the public was that he had been secretly executed. I see. I understand why Vader didn't die. But why are you his descendant? What about Wei-Dualiya? According to the historical records, Wei-Dualiya's ancestor was married. But in reality, it was a fake marriage. Her husband, William, was played by her servant girl disguised as a man. Is that even possible? Nuwa Ayer's words completely shocked Luoya. He never thought that the royal family would be so playful. Miss Angel expressed her understanding of Luoya's shock. In fact, when she first found out about the truth, her reaction was much greater than Luoya's. Wait a minute. The Queen of Wei-Dualiya's fake marriage. Could it be that? Yes. One reason was to legally adopt her younger brother Vader's son. The other reason was Mr. Ponte. After listening to Nuwa Ayer's explanation, Luoya understood that the conservative ideology of that era was far more serious than he had imagined. A third party from the royal family who interfered in a noble's marriage would be viewed with hostility by all noble women. After all, in terms of qualifications, there was basically no woman who could compare to the Queen of the Angel family. In the face of such a situation, the married Ponte didn't want Wei-Dualiya to sacrifice so much for him. After careful consideration, he rejected her. But what he didn't expect was that Wei-Dualiya's feelings weren't just temporary, but long-term love. That's right. The Queen of Wei-Dualiya started a war of attrition. After she adopted Vader's son to shut the mouths of the ministers who were complaining about the lack of a successor, Wei-Dualiya began to wait for Ponte. This lasted for more than 20 years, and Ponte's wife died of exhaustion. Ponte's nominal wife wasn't an extraordinary. Strictly speaking, she was a victim of a traditional marriage. After giving birth, she separated from him and passed away due to illness in her 40s. At that time, Ponte was already in his 50s, and Wei-Dualiya was nearing his 40s. Although they looked very old, it was still considered the golden age for marriage for extraordinary. So they were together in the end? Wait a minute. But Wei-Dualiya only ruled for more than 40 years. In the end, she also passed away due to illness. That means they were together for 10 years? Chapter 108. The Land of Chaos, Tansun Kulin Mountain Range. A man with dark brown hair kicked away a dead man hanging from his sword, and swung his sword to get rid of the remaining blood on the blade. Steam rose from his body and his entire body was red like a boiled crab. But only those who were familiar with him would know that this was the price he had to pay for using the curse. The man's name was Lodney. He was a level 3 source rank supernatural being, and was rather famous in the fringe. However, unlike his status as a high-ranking supernatural being, he did not have a prominent position or a huge fortune. He was a heretic. Heretics were not welcomed in most of the stable human kingdoms. The Austin Empire was an enemy of the theocracy and would accept a few heretics. Other than that, most of the heretics would live in war-torn lands or small kingdoms that lacked supernatural powers. The rest would move to the ungoverned lands at the edge of the human world to fend for themselves. Of course, as a high-ranking supernatural being, Lodny did not have to worry about social connections. When he was young, he did travel to various kingdoms with his passion. But after he was injured in an adventure and suffered from the aftereffects, Lodny stopped. He returned to his hometown and became the village chief of a heretic village in the Fringe. The Fringe was a very special place. The nobles of every kingdom knew that the Fringe often produced precious mutated life forms, or in other words, magical creature materials. But if they were to visit the Fringe in person, they would immediately be regarded as a lunatic. The reason Tansun was called the Fringe was because it was a place where nobles could enter but never leave. Be it the nobles of other kingdoms or the kings of small kingdoms, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. This was because the strength of the residents here was far beyond what the outside world could imagine. Pagans, evil cultists, these people who couldn't live anywhere else had to hide in the mountains for various reasons. Tansun was like a vacuum cleaner, constantly attracting these powerful people who had nowhere to go. This was a dangerous place where only the strong or those who had the protection of the strong could survive. Due to some unknown reasons, the land of Tansun was filled with powerful magical creatures. Every few years, there would be a disastrous beast tide. It could be said that this place was completely unsuitable for human habitation. After a long period of survival of the fittest, nearly half of the people living in this place were supernatural beings. They were powerful, but they were not rich. Therefore, whenever an outsider entered Tansun, unless they were a powerful dragon, they would be ruthlessly slaughtered by them. Usually, the residents of Tansun would build their own villages according to their own sex, and there would be alliances and wars between them. Even though the cultists had many beliefs, it didn't mean that they were brainless. They were equally disgusted with the vicious cultists. Rodney was one of those people who hated the cultists. After killing a member of the evil cult, the brown-haired man was already panting heavily. The evil cult member that had just died under his blade was not just any small fry, but a level 4 source grade expert. The difference between source rank 3 and source rank 4 was obvious. Originally, the difference should have been huge, but Rodney's injuries in his early years made it difficult for him to continue fighting. Furthermore, he wasn't facing a source rank 4. The man looked at the mountain forest that looked like a typhoon had passed through. There were already over 10 people lying there, and none of them had a complete corpse. Without a doubt, this was a fierce battle. But unlike the usual vendettas or fights over territory, the reason for this battle made Rodney very uneasy. These damned cultists were here to rob him. Snake God's Scale. This was an ancient curse item preserved in Rodney's village. As for why it was ancient, it started from Rodney, who brought it back to his hometown. Yes, this Snake God's Scale was brought back by Rodney from the outside many years ago. Rodney did not fight alone in the world back then, but he joined an adventurer group. The Shia world was too big. Currently, there was a large amount of undeveloped land outside of the known areas, but the scope of human activities had been constantly changing since ancient times. The so-called undeveloped land was actually very likely to have a civilization in the distant past. It could have belonged to ancient humans, or it could have belonged to an intelligent race in myths and legends. Not to mention the distant past, even the ancient Austin Empire, which was destroyed after the Turin Rebellion 1,000 years ago, had piles of human relics and good things. Many of them were even priceless now. Such a huge temptation naturally attracted countless people to embark on a journey of searching. Adventurer groups were spontaneous organizations that searched for treasures in ancient ruins. Some were big, some were small, and some were strong. There were all kinds of people in them, and it was common for them to have different countries and religions. As long as they had enough gold coins, everything could be accommodated. Adventurer groups were one of the few industries that the cultists could engage in stably. When Rodney was young, he was upright and powerful. He led his team and made a name for himself. But like many adventurer groups, even they could not escape bad luck. If you often walk by the river, how can your shoes not be wet? It was common for adventurer groups, who were accompanied by danger every day, and even took the initiative to step into dangerous places. Rodney, who was once young and impetuous, thought that his team was the exception, but the final result was cruel. All of his companions were dead. Rodney was the only one who managed to escape with serious injuries. Along with him, the scale of the serpent god was brought out of the ruins and reappeared in the world. According to the dead scholars, the ruins they entered were at least 2,000 years ago, before the establishment of the ancient Austin Empire in the Second Era. The scale of the serpent god was a collection enshrined in the ruins. It was estimated that it was at least 1,000 years old. After his team was wiped out, Rodney was disheartened. He was unwilling to sell his team's last loot to a merchant. So he brought the inconspicuous treasure back to his hometown. But to his surprise, the black scale played a huge role in the fringe. Ever since the scale of the serpent god was brought back, the monsters in the fringe seemed to be afraid of something, and were unwilling to approach Rodney's village. The number of snake monsters in the vicinity also increased significantly, but miraculously, the snakes did not attack the villagers. On the contrary, they seemed to be protecting the villagers. Such a miraculous situation naturally attracted the attention of the people, and Rodney was elected as the village chief. From then on, the village went smoothly for more than 10 years, and the originally small village began to develop into a medium-sized village. Rodney's village had made a fortune with the scale of the serpent god. In a few decades, Rodney's village would have become one of the largest settlements in the fringe. But he did not expect that, for some reason, Tansen's Marta Merchant Guild had set their sights on his village. Marta Merchant Guild was one of the few local merchant guilds in the vicinity of Tansen. On the surface, they appeared to be an ordinary merchant guild that supplied raw materials to various countries. But Rodney and a few others knew that they were actually a whitewashing organization organized by the cultists. Since half a month ago, during the new year, the Marta Chamber of Commerce had gotten wind of the scale of the serpent deity, and came to negotiate with Rodney. At first, they wanted to buy it at a low price, but after being rejected by Rodney, they revealed their true nature and planned to kill and rob without any capital. However, while dreams were plentiful, reality was harsh. How could a village that could produce a genius like Rodney be an ordinary place? Rodney's village was made up of the descendants of the cultists who possessed the power element. According to legend, the power element was passed down from the ancient giants. They were powerful fighters, but they had to pay a heavy price. Historically, their ancestors had relied on their extraordinary abilities to roam the theocracy. But they were forced to flee due to a great calamity. Ever since then, they had taken root in the fringe Tansen. Therefore, although Rodney's village did not have many supernatural individuals, they were all very good fighters. The cultists had kicked an iron plate, and were killed on the spot. At first, Rodney didn't pay much attention to the incident. There were too many cultists in the fringe, and they were as plentiful as wheat. Their leader probably wouldn't even notice that they were missing. But what he didn't expect was that the cultists and Marta Merchant Guild weren't the cultists who had set their sights on them. It was a larger organization. Chapter 109. You saw the revival of the ancient gods last night? Oh, I see. At the edge of the forest, in the middle of a large group of sword-wielding cultists, steamed crab, Rodney weakly responded to Old Wood's words with a pitiful expression. The gray-haired and white-bearded Old Wood was the previous village chief of the village. He had been in charge of the village for many years when Rodney was young. Originally, he had retired after handing over the reins to Rodney, who had returned from a long journey with treasures. But this time, the village was in danger. There were many enemies, so Rodney had no choice but to ask the old village chief for help. Old Wood was a level 3 source ranker. Although he was old, he was more than capable of dealing with some level 4 source rankers. But as the saying goes, every family has its own difficulties. Old Wood did not collapse during the battle, but after the battle, the price he had to pay was easily reversed. Old Wood's price was very simple. It was stupidity. From the perspective of a Luoya modern person, it was a bit like Alzheimer's. Therefore, when Wood descended from the sky and began to tell Rodney about the resurrection of the gods, Rodney felt that this guy was crazy. However, Wood was the former village chief, and Rodney, who respected the old and loved the young, could not refute him. He could only say, "Yes, yes, yes, yes. Damn it. Brat, I'm telling the truth. I've paid the price. I'm not crazy. Yes, the village chief is wise. Do you have anything else?" Curry. You tell him." Looking at Rodney, who was trying to play with him, Old Wood beat his chest and stomped his feet in anger. In the end, he had no choice but to pull over a young man with a dog. The blue-haired young man named Curry stroked the dog and began to testify for Old Wood's words. "A few? Yes, and we all described it afterwards. The scene we saw was basically the same." Curry stroked the dog's head and began to describe in detail. Those who had spirit vision were all extraordinaires who had obtained origin substances and were inclined towards magic. The scene they saw was slightly different, but it was generally the same. The image of a young man standing on the shoulder of a giant skeleton. Did you see it clearly? Rodney finished steaming and asked for details with a confused and doubtful expression, but the answers he received did not satisfy him. The giant skeleton could be explained as the giant's appearance after death, but the young man standing on the giant's shoulder, no matter how one looked at it, didn't they have an equal relationship? But how could humans be on equal footing with giants? Giants were a race on the same level as angels in myths and legends. It could be said that their concept was not much different from that of gods. Would such an existence allow a human to step on their shoulders? But it really is a human youth. That height and build, but I can't see his face clearly. Curry, you don't understand. This is very normal. Most of the great existences can't be seen directly. From this point of view, that young man may be the messenger of God. The emissary of God is the Holy Son. Yes, the Holy Son. Wait a moment. Rodney stood up and stopped the two excited people. He began to pull the dog-headed guard captain and the intermittent Alzheimer patient back to reality. The pagans were different from the Shia believers. Although they were divided into different sects and had different origin substances, many of them did not believe in the gods of their sections. One of the reasons was that their identity as a pagan did not bring them any benefits. Another reason was that most of the gods of their sects had already died, leaving only the origin substances for humans to use. The pagans in Rodney's village all belonged to the faction of the origin substance power. Most of them had respect for the ancient gods, but that was when the ancient gods died or were in a deep sleep. When the source of the power, origin substance awakened again, they would definitely be affected. On the bright side, the awakening of the ancient gods would strengthen the entire origin substance. All the pagans who used the power, origin substance would gradually become stronger in the future. It was like the appearance of a leader activating the entire team. The closer they were to the source, the stronger they would be, and the smoother their development would be. But from a bad point of view, the ancient gods were terrifying existences on the path of ascension. They were likely to influence individuals downstream through the connection of the Sapphira. The most typical example was the conversion of some pagans into cultists. Many pagans did not become cultists of their own volition, but the corruption of the ancient gods upstream of the Sapphira had affected them. This subjective uncontrollability could be said to be an important reason why the mainstream human community refused to use the origin substances other than the three major origin substances. Now Rodney and the others had to face such a risk. From the situation of spirit vision, it seems that he has no intention of controlling us. Of course, it could also be that our gazes are not threatening at all and did not attract his attention at all. Wood stroked his beard and said. Wood said while stroking his beard, just like how humans would not notice the eyes of ants when they were walking, it was normal for great beings to ignore small human beings. However, from this point of view, ignoring them seemed to be equivalent to not knowing how to manipulate them. It seemed to be a good thing. If we can find that young man, the Son of God, we might be able to ask for the protection of the gods through him. But the location? The old man frowned and sighed. So far, they had too little information, and there was nothing they could do. Rodney listened for a while, reorganized his emotions, and began to talk about his findings. I know what you're talking about, but we don't have the time to discuss it in detail. The Marta conglomerate has their eyes on us. They want the scale of the serpent god. It seems that there's a force that wants to buy it at a high price. I just forced them to tell me this. There's a force behind the Marta conglomerate? Chapter 110. Inside the maze, Luoya leaned back in his chair and heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that his lifespan had accelerated today. After lunch and before dinner, Luoya felt like a year. The conversation with Nua Iyer made Luoya sigh about the journey in the previous historical fragments. He also learned about the ending of the characters, but he didn't forget that one of them was still alive. He was still in front of him a few days ago. Felder is Brian? How is this possible? Even Nua Iyer, who trusted Luoya completely, couldn't believe it. She had seen Felder with her own eyes. The loyal blonde knight had left a deep impression on her. And it was even quite a positive one. The difference between Felder and the venomous Brian was too big. Luoya, could there be a mistake? Maybe there's a mistake, because they're of the same bloodline? No, I think the result of the spell should be correct. Recalling President Alvin's advice and the disclosure of the internal investigation results of Sorofia, Luoya further strengthened his confidence in his skills. There shouldn't be a problem with the spell. Felder committed suicide in the historical records, but you know the contents of the history books. They can't be trusted at all. Even if he really committed suicide, with the power of Eric's family at that time, it's possible to find some strange method to resurrect him. That's true. The cultists have many such methods, and most of them will cause a drastic change in the personality of the resurrected person. Is this the reason? Nua Iyer thought about the possibility of the cultists and discussed with Luoya. Finally, they decided to report this matter to the elders in the family. But this kind of thing without any evidence is impossible to investigate Eric's family. Well, I understand. I didn't expect this to affect them. I just want to remind you that there may be something darker behind Eric's family. Luoya's serious words made Nua Iyer feel warm in her heart. The two talked for a long time, and it was inevitable that they talked about the kiss that caused the rumors outside. The black-haired boy looked at his lips in the mirror with an unnatural expression. In his previous life, he studied hard in high school, and didn't fall in love immediately after college. Nua Iyer's kiss seemed to be his first kiss in 2 lifetimes. His face was a little hot when he thought about it. But what made his brain heat up even more was the look on Noelle's face when she mentioned it. The blonde girl said that it was just a treatment, but when she saw Luoya's face, she gradually began to pant. She bit her lips, stuck out her tongue, and licked her lips. She then narrowed her eyes and whispered in his ear. "Oh, that was my first kiss." Hearing this, Luoya's heart trembled. He didn't know why Miss Angel suddenly became perverted. Nua Iyer's breath on his ear made his heart itch. He had a strong desire to hug her, but he restrained himself in the end. "Well, you didn't pounce on me? Why should I pounce on you?" Roja was speechless as he looked at Noelle's face that said, "You're not right." He suspected that she thought all the men in the world were idiots. This kind of narcissism. Well, she seems to have the capital to be narcissistic. Luoya looked at the almost perfect beauty in front of him. He suddenly felt that his willpower was too strong. A normal person wouldn't be able to resist the temptation of a princess like Nua Iyer. After thinking for a long time, he thought that it might be because he watched too much AI Lizzie, which trained him to resist the perfect creature. "So what if I pounced on you? Would you let me have my way?" "No, I thought that would give me a reason to step on you." Nua Iyer was honest with her intentions. Luoya couldn't help but widen his eyes. Can you not always set so many traps? Because you've always rejected me. Even if it's me, I still want you to accommodate me a little according to my preferences." The blonde girl seemed a little lonely as she sighed. Seeing this, Roja's eyebrows twitched. After a while he asked, "What do you mean by stepping on me? Are you really willing to accompany me? It's actually very simple. You just have to lie on the ground like a dog." "I refuse." Luoya rejected the angel of abuse halfway through. Nua Iyer was speechless and dissatisfied, but she didn't say anything. The two chatted for a while before leaving the room one after the other to have a tea party with AI Lizzie. But Luoya didn't expect it to be a hellish afternoon tea party. Luoya was sandwiched between Nua Iyer and Ai Lizzie by the window. He stared blankly at the forks the two girls put in front of him. Chapter 111. Luoya sat on the Gulandayer's shoulder, overlooking the setting sun and the earth. Whether it was the ancient gods or the giants, they were existences that must be respected since ancient times. If it was in ancient times, standing on the shoulders of such a giant was only allowed to be a higher race. Existences like humans could only crawl on the ground and wait for their mountain-like bodies to pass by. It was normal for Rodney and the others to have doubts. No matter what era it was, humans were too far behind these ancient monsters. If they were the explorers of this world's extraordinary power, then humans were at most lagging behind by who knows how many years. Of course, these were of no reference value to Luoya. His current identity was that of a friend who had signed an equal contract with the Gulandayer. For others, standing on the shoulders of the Gulandayer was equivalent to counting down one's life, but for Luoya it was nothing. It was even more convenient for him to chat. Gulandayer, why did I see you? After nearly half a month, Luoya was very happy to see the huge skeleton again in his dream. He finally confirmed that the Gulandayer could also appear in the real world. However, Luoya had always been curious about it. If my bloodline ability is to enter those fragments of history and witness some things that have been forgotten by humans, then how did I connect with you? You died a long time ago, right? Luoya held his chin and pondered. The giants had long disappeared in the third era of Wei-Dualia. The Gulandayer himself said that he had died a long time ago. Then why did Luoya meet him? Bloodline ability? If it was bloodline ability, then what was the mechanism? It couldn't be a lottery, right? Luoya's question made the skeleton silent. The Gulandayer's huge hand rubbed the bald skull, as if thinking about something. After I died and became like this, I forgot a lot of things from my life. My brain is a little empty. The Gulandayer complained in distress. After hearing it, Luoya nodded in understanding. Powerful from nothing? Wasn't that so? His brains were all gone. The young man looked at the huge skull and complained in his heart. The Gulandayer was still recalling. In fact, I have met several people like you. What? People like me? Yes, those who can enter the plains of eternal dusk. The Gulandayer recalled the intruders he had seen in countless years. He said lightly, there are about 5 or 6 intruders. There are about 5 or 6 of them. I can't remember their specific appearances, but everyone is dressed differently. They shouldn't be from the same country. No, I'm afraid that they are not from the same era. Well, that's possible. After all, my concept of time. Gulandar rubbed his bald head that was wearing a crown. His eyes flickered as if he was reminiscing about the past. Their strength is very similar to yours. One of the human women seems to be quite powerful as well. Woman? A woman that you think is powerful? The young man was surprised when he heard the unexpected news. He had seen the power of the Gulandayer. To be able to get a powerful evaluation from him. She was probably the leader of the human supernatural power of an era. Wait, such a powerful person came to you before. Why didn't you choose her? She didn't even listen to my question. She said that she encountered a great crisis and needed my help. She seemed to be in a hurry. But she is not my believer. I have no reason to help her for free. I see. Wait, believer? What believer? Luoya, who couldn't understand the words, turned his head in confusion. The Gulandayer explained. Just like how humans used the 3 origin substances, the giant tribe also had an origin substance that was most suitable for them. It was called power. The so-called believers were simply the descendants of humans who used the origin substance developed by the giant tribe, and they formed a sect. Through special rituals, these later humans could transmit their prayers and offerings through the channel of the supernatural power system to the upper reaches of the system. This was the purpose of most of the rituals of various sections. According to the Gulandayer, there would occasionally be similar messages that could be transmitted to him. It could be seen that there were still people in the outside world who used the power, origin substance. I see. Then this time when you go out from here, Can they feel it? They should be able to. I can even control them. However, they are a group of little guys. They are not very useful. I see. Luoya nodded. The young man didn't know what level the little guys that the Gulandair mentioned were, so he didn't care too much about it. The giant skeleton returned to the starting point after running away from the topic. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.